Chapter 1194. The exquisite saber technique was like a stream of light in the sky, but also like the floating clouds on a snowy mountain. When it surged, it was majestic. When it was vigorous, it was like a surging tide. When it was heavy, it was like a mountain rising from the ground. When it was sharp, it was like a sharp blade splitting the air. But no matter what, every saber technique emitted a chill that swept through the surroundings. With a saber in hand, Fu Yunxiao performed the exquisite saber technique to the extreme. Fu Yunxiao's martial arts realm had reached the third level of small success, which was 2 levels lower than Chen Zong. But Fu Yunxiao had cultivated for many years and had a more comprehensive grasp of the third level of martial arts. This was not something that Chen Zong could compare with. Chen Zong's improvement in the third level of sword principle was extremely fast. He broke through to small success, then large success, and finally perfection. If this level was divided into horizontal and vertical levels, the vertical level referred to the level of the level, such as small success, large success, and perfection, while the horizontal level referred to the development of each level. Therefore, in the vertical level of martial arts realm, Chen Zong obviously surpassed Fu Yunxiao, but in the horizontal level, he was not as good as Fu Yunxiao. This was not something that could be solved with talent and comprehension alone. It also required a certain amount of time to hone and settle down. Chen Zong's cultivation time, environment, and inheritance were far inferior to Fu Yunxiao's. The gap had existed for a long time. But now, Chen Zong was gradually catching up and even surpassed him in some aspects. Chen Zong was never afraid of strong opponents. He was still young and had time, energy, talent, and determination to catch up and surpass. Chen Zong was afraid that no one could beat him. That was to reach the peak one day and be invincible. It was lonely at the top. Of course, there were countless cultivators in the world who could guarantee that they were truly invincible. Even the Heart Sword Saint, who created the Heart Sword Sutra, did not dare to say that he was invincible. Under the superb realm of sword principle, the heavy dragon sword was sometimes extremely heavy, like a mountain pressing down from the sky. Its power was unparalleled. Sometimes it was as light as a tree branch and extremely flexible, creating countless sword shadows. Sometimes it was like a cloud floating in the sky, containing all kinds of changes. Sometimes it was like a mighty wind sweeping through thousands of miles. White Cloud Mountain's martial arts had always been about changes. The 5 White Cloud Paths were an overview. Regardless of whether it was the Flying Cloud Path that focused on speed or the Refining Cloud Path that focused on strength, they both contained the essence of transformations. However, they were not as complicated as the illusory cloud path. Fu Yunxiao was a disciple of White Cloud Mountain. Chen Zong was also a disciple of White Cloud Mountain. Both of them cultivated White Cloud Mountain's martial arts, and each of them had their own understanding of the Tao of transformations. The ever-changing saber and ever-changing sword continued to clash, colliding time and time again, dodging time and time again, attacking the opponent's flaws. Regardless of whether there were changes or not, every strike was extremely terrifying. Especially this kind of close combat, it was even more shocking, causing everyone's hearts to beat wildly. Their breathing became hurried, and the blood in their bodies seemed to be boiling. It was too brilliant, too dangerous, too exciting, and it caused one to feel as if they were in the real world. It was as if there were saber lights and sword images revolving endlessly around their bodies, and one could faintly sense the terrifying sharpness of the saber lights. Gao Hongjing's expression was solemn. His battle with Chen Zong and Fu Yunxiao had not been this intense. This kind of battle did not test one's own strength, but the level of one's martial arts attainments and martial arts realm, the degree of one's control over one's own strength, and the collision of one's combat talent and skills. Very clever. Both of them were very clever. Immediately, Gao Hongjing's lips curled into a sneer. Having fought with Chen Zong, he was very clear about Chen Zong's learning ability. In the beginning, Chen Zong did not understand martial arts fusion, but after fighting with him, he gradually mastered it. Now, he had reached a certain level of proficiency in martial arts fusion, making each of his sword moves more powerful. Gao Hongjing believed that in the process of fighting with Fu Yunxiao, Chen Zong's swordsmanship would definitely improve again, and Fu Yunxiao would soon have a taste of what he felt at that time. Indeed, Fu Yunxiao had already felt it. He could feel that his opponent was rapidly improving, and each of his sword moves was becoming more unpredictable. Even Fu Yunxiao could feel that the rapid improvement of his opponent's swordsmanship was closely related to him, as if he was feeding his opponent moves. But in fact, that was not the case. He was not feeding Chen Zong, but was truly displaying his own saber skills. His purpose was to defeat Chen Zong, but because of Chen Zong's excellent control over his strength and swordsmanship, he felt that he had met his match, and the battle was unrestrained. Fu Yunxiao was different from Gao Hongjing. When Gao Hongjing realized that Chen Zong's swordsmanship was rapidly improving, he felt great pressure. Therefore, he activated all his strength, intending to defeat Chen Zong with tyrannical strength and win. However, Fu Yunxiao did not do so directly, because he believed in himself, and also felt lucky to have met a good opponent. Even if Chen Zong was improving under his own pressure, it was still his ability. Moreover, Fu Yunxiao also planned to use Chen Zong to sharpen his saber skills, so that his saber skills could be more refined. This was the difference between Fu Yunxiao and Gao Hongjing, the difference in their mentality. Gao Hongjing did not want to become Chen Zong's whetstone, and did not want to let Chen Zong's swordsmanship improve because of him. He did not want to use this to sharpen his spear skills. However, Fu Yunxiao was different. Fu Yunxiao's mentality was better, and he was more open-minded. People like him could often cultivate to a higher level. Of course, it was not certain that Gao Hongjing could not cultivate to a higher level. There were no absolutes in the world. Chen Zong's swordsmanship had improved through practice and learning, and so did Fu Yunxiao. However, Fu Yunxiao's speed of improvement was much slower than Chen Zong's. Even if Fu Yunxiao had a good mentality, he could not help but feel jealous. At this moment, Chen Zong was like a dry sponge, constantly absorbing water to enrich himself. There was nothing more intuitive than improving and breaking through in a battle. This battle lasted for an hour. Chen Zong's swordsmanship had improved significantly compared to before. Fu Yunxiao's saber skills had improved, but it was not so obvious. After all, he had almost reached a limit in his cultivation. If he wanted to improve, he could only break through to a higher level. However, it was not so easy to break through to a higher level. On the other hand, Chen Zong's level was very high. It was like filling a bucket with water. Fu Yunxiao's bucket was 1 meter high, while Chen Zong's bucket was 2 meters high. Now, Fu Yunxiao's bucket had been filled with nearly 1 meter of water. If he continued to fill it, it would overflow. Unless he modified the bucket and made it taller, it could hold more water. However, Chen Zong's 2-meter bucket was less than 1 meter of water. Now it was gradually increased to 1 meter, but there was still space for more water. Naturally, Fu Yunxiao's bucket could not be compared with his. After an hour of fierce fighting, neither of them could defeat the other because they each had their own strengths. Chen Zong felt very satisfied and satisfied. It could be said that Fu Yunxiao was the first opponent who could fight with Chen Zong to this extent in martial arts. Gao Hongjing and Bai Xie could not do it. Sure enough, he deserved to be the first on the last cloud list. They stopped fighting tacitly and instantly distanced themselves from each other. In the last breath, the saber light and the sword shadow tore through all directions. In the next breath, the saber light and the sword shadow disappeared. How wonderful! These two are too strong. Who can get the first place? Below the arena, everyone was dumbfounded. After half an hour of fierce fighting, it had been like a violent storm, causing everyone to forget how to breathe. Now that the situation had suddenly come to a standstill, the sudden change had caused some of them to feel dizzy and on the verge of collapse. Fortunately, everyone here was a transcendent realm cultivator, their strength not to be underestimated, and their life force far surpassed that of ordinary people, allowing them to recover in a breath's time. If it was a Foundation establishment cultivator who had not improved their life rating, they would have fainted. If it was an ordinary person, their consciousness would have probably collapsed and they would have died. "I'm very happy to have met you." Fu Yunxiao stared at Chen Zong. His face was no longer calm and indifferent. Instead, a smile appeared on his face. It was a resounding and impassioned smile. His eyes even shot out an extremely sharp light as his battle intent surged. Fu Yunxiao's current state stunned everyone, and they thought they were seeing things. Even in the last Cloud List tournament, when Fu Yunxiao and Gao Hongjing fought, it was not like this. "Same to you." Chen Zong smiled slightly. "Fu Yunxiao was really a good opponent, a very good opponent. Your strength and swordsmanship are both very strong. Even if I go all out to defeat you, it won't be that easy." Fu Yunxiao spoke again. It was very rare, because from the beginning of the Outer Sect Great Competition until now, Fu Yunxiao had not spoken until now. 50-50. 50-50. This referred to Fu Yunxiao's chances of winning if he went all out against Chen Zong. There was a 50% chance of winning, 50% chance of losing. This probability was just as Chen Zong had imagined. 50-50. It seemed that Fu Yunxiao's strength was stronger, but Chen Zong also had his strength. If they really went all out, it would be hard to tell who would win and who would lose until the last moment. Everyone could not help but wonder. Since it was a 50% chance of winning and losing was hard to predict, was he not going to fight? If he wanted to fight, how would he fight? Chen Zong was also very curious. "That's not my original intention. However, there has to be a winner in this battle. I want to be number one." Fu Yunxiao sighed slightly. Immediately, his expression turned cold and his eyes became even sharper. "If that's the case, I can only rely on some external help." "External help?" Chen Zong frowned slightly. Fu Yunxiao's voice was not loud, but everyone could hear him clearly. Then what was the so-called external help? There were always rules in the Outer Sect Great Competition. Some external help could not be relied on, such as asking others to help, borrowing other people's strength, and also could not use elixirs that could increase one's strength in a short period of time. After all, those elixirs had obvious side effects. In serious cases, it could even affect one's foundation. If one's foundation was affected, it would mean that one's future path of cultivation would be even more difficult. This was not beneficial to the sect. Then, what other external help could they rely on? The range was very small, and the amount of external help they could rely on was also very small. Chen Zong's gaze fell on the long saber in Fu Yunxiao's hand. At the same time, Fu Yunxiao's gaze also fell on the long saber in his hand. Frost Cloud Snow Saber. Chapter 1195. The cloud-white aura was filled with an astonishing chill. It spread like a frost mist and wrapped around the long saber from top to bottom. It was like an invisible ice silkworm spinning a cocoon. Strands of it quickly spread out and pervaded Fu Yunxiao's body, protecting him firmly. This layer of defense seemed thin, but it was actually extremely astonishing. Even if Chen Zong used his full strength, he still couldn't break it. Half-Saint grade. It was an astonishing defense that could withstand a half-Saint grade attack, and the source was the long saber. This saber is called Frost Cloud Shining Snow. A faint and empty voice came from Fu Yunxiao's mouth. It was as if he was mumbling to himself at the peak of a snowy mountain. "It's a natural spiritual weapon." Chen Zong was secretly surprised. A natural spiritual weapon was extraordinary. Gao Hongjing's Crimson Dragon Sky Splitting Spear was a natural spiritual weapon, but Bai Xia's 9th grade spiritual weapon wasn't. He didn't expect the long saber in Fu Yunxiao's hand to be a natural spiritual weapon. It was difficult to tell whether it was a natural spiritual weapon or not. I've done my best to cultivate this saber. Today, it's the first time I've released its true power. As Fu Yunxiao's voice fell, suddenly, there seemed to be an empty saber cry. It was like a light cry on a snowy mountain that reverberated in all directions. The astonishing chill suddenly exploded and turned into an astonishing wave of cold that swept out in all directions. The frost aura quickly spread like a wave and covered all directions. In the blink of an eye, with Fu Yunxiao as the center, the surrounding arena was suddenly covered by a layer of frost. It quickly spread out and covered the entire arena. Chen Zong's figure lightly jumped and avoided the spreading frost. Using his absolute control over his own strength, his figure was as light as a feather as he slowly floated down from the air. At this speed, it would take at least a dozen breaths of time to reach the ground. Amidst the ear-piercing cracking sounds, the entire arena was suddenly covered by frost and completely frozen. The white-blue ice spread layer by layer. It was more than 3 feet thick. It was extremely terrifying. An astonishing chill continuously spread out from it and soared into the sky. Chen Zong, who was slowly floating down, couldn't help but feel cold all over. That terrifying chill seemed to want to enter his body and wreak havoc. It was very cold. It was a coldness that could freeze one's blood, qi, and even one's soul. The expressions of the disciples standing outside the ring also changed greatly. They trembled all over and quickly circulated their secret arts to resist the chill and quickly retreated to open up a distance. It was as if they had suddenly entered a cold winter. Moreover, it was not an ordinary cold winter, but an extremely terrifying cold winter. Gao Hongjing and Bai Xia's expressions were incomparably solemn. Even they were unable to ignore such cold qi. They had to divert a portion of their strength to resist it. It could be imagined that if he were to divert a portion of his strength to resist this terrifying cold qi, he would not be able to fully display his strength. With a boom, the cold mist exploded. The long saber in Fu Yunxiao's hand seemed to have changed. Strands of cold air revolved around the blade, fluctuating and flickering. It looked like frost and lightning, emitting an astonishing and terrifying power. With the saber in hand, Fu Yunxiao's aura continued to strengthen. It broke through its original limits and reached an even higher level. Half-step saint. Fu Yunxiao's aura had reached the half-saint level. Everyone below the arena was dumbfounded. The strength of a half-step saint was already very powerful. One had to know that Fu Yunxiao was not considered old. He was only in his 30s. Half-step saints in their 30s were very rare. Even if Fu Yunxiao borrowed the power of the Hanyun Snow Saber to reach the half-step saint level, the Hanyun Snow Saber was a natural spiritual weapon and was one with Fu Yunxiao. It was cultivated by Fu Yunxiao to the half-step saint level, so it could be considered Fu Yunxiao's strength. If news of a half-step saint in his 30s were to spread, it would cause a huge uproar. Of course, White Cloud Mountain was an 8-star force. Whether it was in terms of strength or background, it was shocking. Naturally, there were many half-step saint experts, but all of them were over 40 or 50 years old. Why were there no half-step saints participating in the Outer Sect tournament? That was the restriction of the sect's rules. White Cloud Mountain's Outer Sect tournament was held once every 5 years. At most, one could participate in 2 tournaments. After all, the span of the 2 tournaments was 10 years. 10 years was enough for one to improve greatly. Letting disciples who had cultivated for 10 more years to participate in the Outer Sect tournament was actually very unfair to the other disciples. Letting disciples who had participated in the first Outer Sect tournament participate in the second tournament was already the biggest concession. All in all, White Cloud Mountain had quite a few sect rules. Although there were quite a few semi-saint experts, they were not allowed to participate in the Outer Sect Grand Competition. Of course, semi-saint experts also had their own special treatment. Although the rewards for the Outer Sect Grand Competition were pretty good, it was not too much for them. After all, every half-step saint had cultivated saint-grade arts and martial arts. At the very least, they were of the low grade. Fu Yunxiao is definitely going to win, an inner sect disciple said. The strength of a half-step saint was enough to sweep the entire outer sect tournament. His strength has not reached the half-step saint level, but he has a half-step saint artifact. Another inner sect disciple squinted his eyes slightly. There was envy in his voice. One had to know that when they were still in the Transcendence realm, they did not have a half-step saint artifact. It was only after breaking through to the half-step saint level that they obtained a half-step saint artifact. Being able to obtain a half-step saint artifact in advance was undoubtedly a great advantage. It's a half-step saint artifact. Chenzong is definitely going to lose. Without a doubt, the first place on this year's cloud ranking is still in senior brother Fu Yunxiao's bag. Looking at the long saber in Fu Yunxiao's hand that was exuding an amazing power and chill, everyone felt that the dust had settled. There was no need for this battle to continue. Chenzong was indeed very strong, but his strength was still limited to the Transcendence realm. He had not yet reached the half-step saint level. Without reaching the half-step saint level, he was not a match for a half-step saint master. Using this power is too much of a bully. Fu Yunxiao shook his head slightly. To be honest, he did not intend to use this power in the beginning. However, Chenzong was too strong and he did not have the confidence to defeat him. On the other hand, Fu Yunxiao was determined to obtain the first place on this year's cloud ranking. In that case, he had to make a few choices. Either he fought Chenzong with his own strength, but there was a possibility that he would be defeated by Chenzong and miss the opportunity to obtain the first place on the cloud ranking. Or he could unlock the seal of the Cold Cloud Snow Reflecting Saber and release the true power of the Cold Cloud Snow Reflecting Saber, which was the half-step power. Using the power of a half-step saint was indeed a bit of a bully, but in any case, the Cold Cloud Snow Reflecting Saber was his innate spirit artifact. He had cultivated it single-handedly. In a sense, it was his own power. Fu Yunxiao opened his mouth again and his eyes became cold. Since he had unlocked the power of the Cold Cloud Snow Reflecting Saber, there was no need for regrets. He only had determination. Chin Shitty, if you can take one slash of my sword, I will lose. Senior brother Fu Yunxiao is giving Chenzong a chance. Some disciples exclaimed. A chance, my ass. Do you think Chenzong can take the slash of a half-step saint? Some disciples curled their lips. The strength of a half-step saint was undoubtedly stronger. Without the strength of a half-step saint, one would not be able to withstand one slash, and would be defeated directly. Therefore, there was no difference between 1 slash, 2 slashes, or 3 slashes. Of course, perhaps Chenzong could really take the slash and win if he used all his strength. No. Chenzong shook his head. Senior brother Fu, just use all your strength. As he spoke, Chenzong's figure also floated down from the arena. Powerful qi and blood surged through his body. Wisps of purple cloud-black star flames spread out and isolated the invading cold air. It could not enter his body at all, so naturally, it could not affect Chenzong at all. As soon as Chenzong finished speaking, the heavy dragon sword returned to its scabbard like a swallow returning to its nest. Then, Chenzong's hand swiped across it and disappeared. Everyone could not help but widen their eyes. What was going on? Why did Chenzong put away his sword instead? In the next moment, a new sword appeared in Chenzong's hand. The sword was sparkling and translucent, as if the body of the sword was made of flawless crystal. There was a golden line spreading along the sword's spine, and the sword's edge was suffused with a golden light. Wisps of flame were burning on the sword's body. Chenzong had not used this sword since he returned to the Lingwu Holy World for more than a year. Half-step saint weapon, red flame sharp sword. Now, with the sword in his hand, Chen Zong could feel the strong power contained in the red flame sharp sword by controlling it with his heart. The strength of a half-step saint. Originally, Chen Zong did not want to use the red flame sharp sword. But now, Fu Yunxiao had used a half-step saint weapon and had the strength of a half-step saint. If he did not use the red flame sharp sword, he would not be Fu Yunxiao's opponent at all. Chen Zong's choice was very simple. He could either admit defeat and lose the first place, but Chen Zong also wanted the first place. Therefore, he could only use the red flame sharp sword. Half-step saint weapon! Exclamations suddenly sounded. Everyone was shocked. It turned out that Chen Zong also had a half-step saint weapon. He hid it so well. The disciples smiled bitterly. Gao Hongjing was stunned at first, and then his face became gloomy. It turned out that Chen Zong was still hiding a half-step saint weapon. If he had used the half-step saint weapon in the previous battle, he would not have been able to withstand a single strike. Thinking of this, Gao Hongjing's eyelids twitched. Fu Yunxiao was also shocked. He never expected that Chen Zong would also have a half-step saint weapon. What was the difference between this and the previous battle when he did not use the half-step saint weapon? The chances of winning and losing were still 50-50. Fu Yunxiao did not know whether to laugh or cry. After going back and forth, he finally returned to his original position. But now that things had come to this, he could only fight. Moreover, Fu Yunxiao wanted to give it a try. If he used the half-step saint weapon with his strength below the half-step saint weapon, he would not be able to use it for a long time, and his strength would be greatly consumed. The Hanyun Snowblade was his natural spiritual weapon and was closely related to him. Therefore, when he used it, the consumption of his strength would be reduced. Moreover, he had reached the third level of the martial arts realm, so he could further reduce the consumption of his strength. In this way, Chen Zong's strength would only be consumed more than his. In this way, he could win. The thought flashed through his mind quickly. Fu Yunxiao took a step forward as if he was taking a stroll in the courtyard. This step turned into a cold wind that swept forward, covering the sky and covering the earth, as if it could freeze everything. Chapter 1196. The wind blew and the snow surged. It was as if a snowstorm from the extreme north was sweeping forward. The whistling sound of the wind filled the heavens and earth, and no other sound could be heard. The heavens and earth were covered in white. The wind and snow turned into ice shards that were like goose feathers sweeping across the land. It covered the sky and covered the earth, freezing all life and ending the world. But the scarlet flame sword in Chen Zong's hand instantly flashed, and with a swooshing sound, a golden flame suddenly burst out from the body of the sword, burning fiercely. It was as if the water of a long river flowed endlessly, transforming into a golden flame that spread in all directions, directly burning and melting the ice storm that swept over. Countless white fog rose up, covering all directions. The sound of sizzling filled the heavens and earth, giving people an indescribable feeling. The entanglement of ice and fire, the collision of the long sword and the sharp sword, the tyrannical aura of a half-step saint continued to spread out, affecting the surroundings more and more. The elder in charge of the outer sect grand competition had no choice but to set up a layer of protection around the arena, isolating it from the outside world so that the arena would not be affected. The bone-chilling coldness and the scorching heat collided again and again. As the steam rose, it filled the entire arena, making it difficult for people to see what was happening inside. In the thick steam, Fu Yunxiao and Chen Zong approached each other and swung their swords. With a half-saint weapon in hand, both of them had the frightening strength of a half-saint. Moreover, under the third level of the way of the sword, their energy consumption would be lower and they could last longer. Chen Zong's sword of the heart had reached perfection and was much stronger than Fu Yunxiao. Therefore, his energy consumption was much lower. Although Fu Yunxiao's level was not as high as Chen Zong's, the frost cloud reflecting snow blade was one with him and grew together. Therefore, his energy consumption was much lower. The exquisite sword and saber techniques, the tyrannical strength of a half-saint, the power that burst out was even more frightening. Both of them were half-saints. For a moment, the battle between the two was incomparably intense. No one could do anything to the other. Fu Yunxiao seized an opportunity and slashed with his blade. An indescribable aura spread out and the second blade followed. Mystic Nine-Blade Slash. This was the mysterious martial art that had defeated Gao Hongjing before. 9 consecutive saber strikes, each strike stronger than the previous one, especially the 9th saber strike, which burst out with an astonishing power. Raising his sword to meet the attack, Chen Zong withstood the 9-blade slashes. He could feel the power increasing, especially the last blade. It was so powerful that Chen Zong was forced back. In an instant, Fu Yunxiao slashed again. The 9 blades formed a wave. If it was not Chen Zong's body. However, Chen Zong had his own reasons for doing so, and that was to comprehend the profundity of Fu Yunxiao's 9 blades. At the same time, Chen Zong slashed with his sword. This sword seemed to be stabbing into the air, but there was an indescribable mystery to it. It was as if it had stabbed into a certain point, which made Fu Yunxiao's expression change. The continuous power of the 9 mysterious knife slash was suddenly broken. The real power of the mystic 9-blade slash was continuous. Slash after slash. 9 consecutive slashes. The power had reached the peak. If the slash was broken, the power could not be fully exerted. It was similar to a normal slash. After breaking through the 9 mysterious blade cut, Chen Zong's sword ring moved freely. In an instant it slashed down towards Fu Yunxiao as if it could split the heavens and earth. Fu Yunxiao's expression changed drastically. White cloud soaring heaven technique. Soaring heaven technique. Fu Yunxiao's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. He blocked Chen Zong's sword with his saber and counterattacked. Tranquil sword. Purple cloud black star flame. Chen Zong also activated all his power. Every time the sword and saber collided, it gave people an earth-shattering shock. It was as if everything in all directions was torn apart. The power was terrifying. Sword and saber scars covered the ring. Even with the ring's powerful correction power, it could not be repaired in an instant. It would take at least 3 breaths. This was the power of a half-saint. Of course, if he wanted to give the ring more correction power, it would increase the consumption of power. The current correction power was enough. It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was splitting. It was as if the earth was breaking and the moon was falling. This kind of power was isolated in the ring. It was difficult for the outside world to feel it, but the scene in front of their eyes made everyone horrified. Too strong. The strength of a half-step saint was really too strong and terrifying. Moreover, these two people's martial arts attainments were very high. They were even more powerful. Gao Hongjing's expression was very ugly. The corner of his eyes twitched. Bai Xia's face was also very serious. If Chen Zong and Fu Yunxiao had used this kind of strength in their previous battle, they would not have been able to withstand even one move. They could not see clearly at all. They could only hear the continuous sound. It was extremely complicated and ear-piercing. It was as if it was stirring up everyone's spiritual will and tearing their souls apart. The sound of the sword and saber colliding was even more terrifying. Those who were not strong enough felt as if their heads were being split open. Fu Yunxiao quickly retreated. His body was like the wind. Frost condensed into snowflakes and flew around his body. He held his Hanyun snow saber horizontally in front of his chest. 4 fingers of his left hand touched the saber. The saber trembled. A shocking buzzing sound resounded through the world. The icy saber radiance suddenly spread out as if it was awakened. After that, strands of cloud markings lit up and appeared on the blade. They overlapped with each other like numerous towering mountains that were spread out between the heavens and the earth. Every single mountain was suffused with a shocking aura. Those were not ordinary mountains. They were snowy mountains. Snowy mountains were majestic and thick, and they were filled with a shocking chill. An extremely terrifying aura spread out. It was even stronger than before. Thousand snow, Fu Yunxiao said word by word. His expression was cold and solemn. His eyes were cold and sharp. It was like an eternal ice that froze the world. The moment the third word, snow, fell, Fu Yunxiao swung his saber horizontally in front of his chest. It seemed to be very slow and ordinary, just like a normal swing of the blade. However, in an instant, the illusory snow-capped mountains floating on the blade suddenly burst out with an astonishing cold light. The cold light spread and connected into a large area, giving off an astonishing momentum that could shatter heaven and earth. It was like the 1,000-year-old snow on a huge snow-capped mountain was collapsing, constantly sweeping downwards. The more it swept, the faster it moved, and the more powerful and terrifying it became. It was enough to cause the earth to collapse. This saber was Fu Yunxiao's ultimate move. It was a self-created ultimate move that he created by watching the collapse of the snowy mountains and his own saber technique. When he fought with Gao Hongjing, Fu Yunxiao did not use this move. It was because he did not need to use this move to deal with Gao Hongjing and Bai Xia. However, he had no choice but to use this move against Chen Zong. The power of this ultimate move was unparalleled. At the same time, the energy consumption was also very shocking. After all, this move was very strong, but it was not perfect. If it was perfected, its power would only increase further. On the contrary, the energy consumption would decrease. Even though it was not perfect, the power of this move was very terrifying. It was terrifying to the extreme. When the saber was swung, the saber disappeared. There was only a shocking impact of light. It was as if a snowy mountain was collapsing. It was filled with a violent and domineering aura that could destroy the world. It attacked everything, engulfed everything, and destroyed everything. All obstructions and obstacles could not be resisted. They would only be completely destroyed. Chen Zong's expression suddenly changed. He instantly felt like he was standing in front of a huge snowy mountain, facing the collapse of a snowy mountain. The power of heaven and earth, the terrifying truth contained in nature, made people tremble from the depths of their souls. This was an unavoidable reaction that originated from the nature of life. The corner of Gao Hongjing's eyes twitched even more. The power of this saber was too terrifying. Even if Fu Yunxiao did not use a sage-level weapon, he would not be able to resist it even if he burst out with all his strength. All his defenses would be destroyed in an instant. What a terrifying saber! Before this, he did not even have the ability to let Fu Yunxiao use this saber. Was he looking down on him? Unable to accept this, Gao Hongjing's chest rose and fell rapidly. He was furious. Facing this saber, the whole arena was filled. The terrifying power spread in all directions. There was nowhere to dodge. Chen Zong could only resist this saber. The pressure was vast and boundless. This kind of pressure was filled with terrifying power. It was as if it could destroy everything. It also carried a shocking chill that froze everything and destroyed all life. The combination of the two forces made the power of this saber break through the limit and go one step further. This kind of pressure made Chen Zong feel suffocated. His body felt as if it was about to be crushed. Even his mind felt as if it was about to be frozen. Under this kind of terrifying pressure, Chen Zong's eyes turned. White filled the air. It was a sea of clouds. The sea of clouds rose and spread in all directions. It was full of unparalleled mystery. Holding the hilt with both hands, he swung it diagonally. The golden sword light immediately tore the sky and pierced through everything. The tyrannical power was activated to the extreme. The purple cloud black star flame was also released without reservation, making the power of this saber even stronger. Chen Zong did not need to resist the whole avalanche. He only needed to cut a hole. Under the tyrannical saber and the existence of a super-strong spiritual sense, the mystery of the heartless sword was activated to the extreme. In an instant, Chen Zong's body was swallowed by the white avalanche and disappeared. However, a purple-gold saber light suddenly flashed. It was like a fish swimming against the current, attacking Fu Yunxiao. Kill. Using Shanxue consumed a lot of Fu Yunxiao's energy. As Chen Zong approached, Fu Yunxiao felt his hair stand on end. He hurriedly waved his saber to resist, but he felt a terrifying force rushing towards him. It was too mysterious and difficult to resist. It was as if there was divine help. Under this saber, Fu Yunxiao was forced to retreat. This retreat was unstoppable. Retreat, retreat, retreat. The impact of the avalanche reverberated in all directions, rolling up terrifying waves. Chen Zong seemed to be walking on the waves. He forced Fu Yunxiao to retreat again and again with his saber. Although using Shanxue was powerful, there were also disadvantages. Chen Zong grasped the opportunity and immediately grasped the rhythm. He expanded the opportunity and forced Fu Yunxiao to be unable to gather strength to counterattack. Heartless Sword. Chapter 1197. There was only one figure left on the 10,000-meter high arena, while another figure stood below the arena. Fu Yunxiao was a little stunned. He smiled bitterly and stared into Chen Zong's eyes. Chen Shidi, you've won. Yes, Chen Zong defeated Fu Yunxiao and won. Around the arena, there was a dead silence. Although the crowd had already expected that the winner of this year's Outer Sect tournament and Roll of Honor would be between Chen Zong and Fu Yunxiao, most of them were subconsciously leaning towards Fu Yunxiao. If Fu Yunxiao defeated Chen Zong and won the first place, most of them would take it for granted. But now, Fu Yunxiao was defeated and Chen Zong won the first place. This stunned everyone. This year's Outer Sect tournament has come to an end. Congratulations to Chen Zong for winning the tournament and being ranked first on the Roll of Honor. The voice of the elder in charge of the Outer Sect tournament resounded like thunder in everyone's ears. It instantly woke up those who were still in disbelief. Facts were facts and could not be changed. Chen Zong was the winner of this year's Outer Sect tournament and ranked first on the Roll of Honor. Chen Zong had the most points, followed by Fu Yunxiao. As the elder in charge of the Outer Sect tournament spoke, the announcement was as follows. Outer Sect tournament, Roll of Honor, first, Chen Zong. Second, Fu Yunxiao. Third, Bai Xie. Fourth, Gao Hongjing. When Gao Hongjing heard his ranking, he only felt his ears buzzing. It was as if there were endless voices ringing in his head, giving him a splitting headache. In the previous Roll of Honor, he was ranked second. This year's Roll of Honor was much stronger, but he actually fell to fourth place. How humiliating was that? Fu Yunxiao's ranking also fell, but Bai Xie's ranking did not change. Fifth place was still Ning Tianming. 5 years ago, he was strong, but now, he was even stronger. Sixth place was Yu Shuiyuan. As for Yu Nianxin, it was a close call. He was ranked 10th. If he was above the top 10, he would not have the opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. Of course, being in the top 10 only meant that they had a chance to fight for it. There was no guarantee that they would get it. However, for cultivators there were many opportunities that they had to fight for themselves. Without sufficient opportunities, strength, and luck, they would never be able to obtain them. However, once the opportunity had been obtained, the rest would depend on their own abilities. Xia Minglang was also not bad, ranking 17th. Those who made it onto the heavenly roll in the Outer Sect tournament would be rewarded by the sect. The higher the ranking, the more generous the rewards. Especially the top 3, they would be rewarded with the right to choose a saint-level cultivation method or martial arts. As for the reward for the first place, not only would they be able to choose a saint-grade cultivation method or martial art, they would even be able to choose a saint-grade mid-grade cultivation method or martial art. Of course, a mid-grade saint-grade artifact would be stronger than a low-grade saint-grade artifact. Chen Zong won first place, so he received 3 rewards from the sect. First, the qualification to choose a saint-level cultivation method or martial art. Second, 1 million sect contribution point. Third, you can choose any treasure from the sect's treasury. The reward for the second place was slightly worse. The saint-grade cultivation method or martial art could only be a low-grade one, and the contribution points would be 900,000. There was also a limit to the treasures that could be chosen from the sect's treasury. There was a slight difference between the third place and the third place. At the fourth place, the qualification to choose a saint-grade cultivation method or martial art was lost. They could only choose a spirit-grade cultivation method or White Cloud 5 Dao. Thus, the difference between the top 3 and the bottom 3 could be seen. However, there was another reward, which was the qualification to enter the Huayun formation to cultivate. Saint-grade cultivation method. Chen Zong's eyes lit up, and his heartbeat quickened. Attention, top 10 on the heavenly roll. In the next half a year, you have to do your best to improve your strength. The fight for the saint opportunity will be held in half a year, the elder said loudly, stirring up waves of emotions in everyone's hearts. Half a year. There was only half a year left. They had to do their best to improve. The outer sect tournament had ended. Following the elder's announcement, everyone left with different emotions. I have to become stronger in this half a year. I have to get the saint opportunity. Gao Hongjing clenched his fist. His expression was cold, and his eyes shone with a sharp light. Compared to the saint opportunity, the first place on the heavenly roll seemed so insignificant. Senior sister, I'll return this sword to you. Chen Zong walked towards Yunyanxin, took out the heavy dragon sword, and handed it to her. It was a good sword. Chen Zong liked and was very satisfied with it. However, this sword was too precious. He could borrow it for a while, but he could not keep it for himself. Not to mention that his relationship with senior sister Yu was not that good. Even if they were good friends, they should know the difference. Junior brother, although this sword is good, it's useless to me. Yunyanxin did not take the heavy dragon sword. Instead, she faced Chen Zong and said seriously, the heavy dragon sword can only collect dust in my hands. But in junior brother's hands, it can display its true power. Yunyanxin naturally knew that Chen Zong had the Scarlet Flame sharp sword. She also knew that Chen Zong would not easily use a half-step saint artifact like the Scarlet Flame sharp sword. As for Chen Zong, his cultivation had not yet reached the limit of the transcendent realm. There was still a big gap between him and the half-step saint realm. Therefore, the heavy dragon sword was a very good weapon for Chen Zong. It was a weapon that could be used under normal circumstances. Earlier, when Yunyanxin took out the heavy dragon sword, she had the intention of giving it to Chen Zong. After seeing him use the heavy dragon sword to defeat strong opponents one after another and display the full power of the heavy dragon sword, she knew that this sword could only be used by people like Chen Zong. A good sword could not be left in the dust. Otherwise, it would be no different from a useless sword. In all fairness, Chen Zong liked the heavy dragon sword very much. It was heavy enough and could release an amazing power in his hand. It was very tyrannical. Senior sister, I will accept the heavy dragon sword. Chen Zong thought for a moment and stared at Yunyanxin seriously, but you can't refuse my gift. Okay. Yunyanxin smiled slightly and narrowed her eyes. Senior sister, I won first place and received 3 rewards. Chen Zong said with a smile. The third reward was to choose a treasure from the treasury. I was going to choose a 9th grade spirit sword. Since I have the heavy dragon sword, I will give it to senior sister. Yunyanxin wanted to refuse. White Cloud Mountain was an 8-star force and was very strong. Naturally, there were many treasures in its treasury. Even the outer vault had many precious treasures. Chen Zong might be able to find a great treasure that was better than the heavy dragon sword. In any case, Chernzong had accepted the heavy dragon sword. Chernzong gave the opportunity to choose a treasure to Yunyanxin. The outer vault of the treasury, as the name implied, corresponded to the transcendent realm, which was the spirit grade. It was impossible to find a half-saint artifact. To be honest, this was not very attractive to Chernzong. And Chernzong's original goal was also to choose a grade 9 spirit sword among them. Since he had the heavy dragon sword, a spirit sword that was very suitable for him, this opportunity was not that important to him. Of course, not that important did not mean it was not important. Its value was also quite amazing. Otherwise, Chernzong would not have given it to Yunyanxin. Perhaps Yunyanxin would find a treasure useful to her. The two of them left together. But in the end, they separated and returned to their own cloud palaces. Chernzong began to choose a secret art. Between a saint-grade secret art and a martial art, Chernzong wanted to choose a secret art. Because a secret art was the foundation of one's strength. First, cultivate a secret art. After all, a saint-grade martial art required the power of a saint-grade secret art to activate. Although White Cloud Mountain was an 8-star force with great strength and deep heritage, it did not have many saint-grade secret arts. There were 4 saint-grade low-rank secret arts and 2 saint-grade mid-rank secret arts. For example, Gao Hongjing's Remnant Cloud Flame Prison Art and Bai Xia's Thousand Cloud Moon Illuminating Art were among them. Fu Yunxiao's White Cloud Soaring Sky Art was also among them. The other saint-grade mid-rank secret art was called Heavenly Cloud Revolving Sky Art. Heavenly Cloud Revolving Sky Art and White Cloud Soaring Sky Art each had their own merit. Although White Cloud Soaring Sky Art was the secret art of White Cloud Mountain, Heavenly Cloud Revolving Sky Art was not weak either. However, Chernzong preferred White Cloud Soaring Sky Art. Because White Cloud Soaring Sky Art and White Cloud Extreme Truth Art came from the same source, it would be easier to switch from White Cloud Extreme Truth Art to White Cloud Soaring Sky Art. Without any hesitation, Chernzong immediately used his reward for first place on the cloud list to exchange for the first 18 stages of White Cloud Soaring Sky Art. As a saint-grade mid-rank secret art, it was countless times more mysterious than a spirit-grade mid-rank secret art. It was impossible to tell just how great the disparity was between the two of them. Wanting to cultivate this secret art was not an easy matter, so for a long period of time, Chernzong simply did not need to worry about this secret art. After choosing a secret art, someone quickly brought over the spirit jade for the first 18 stages of White Cloud Soaring Sky Art. Chernzong looked at the other things. 1 million sect contribution points was not a small sum. He had to make good use of it. After all, there was only half a year left until the fight for the opportunity to become a saint. It was a very short period of time. He had to improve his strength as much as possible. There was still a lot of room for improvement with his late-stage Dragon Strength Realm 9th Layer Body Refinement and Peak Transcendent 8th Layer Qi Refinement. There was still room for improvement, but it would be difficult to improve to the extreme in just half a year. Time was too short. He could only rely on external forces. What external forces? The power of pills or better cultivation grounds. Chernzong had the purple cloud black star flame, which was enough to purify the impurities in pills, not leaving behind any residue in his body that would affect his future cultivation. However, Qi refinement could be improved with a large number of pills, but body refinement was very difficult to improve. Although there were body refinement pills in White Cloud Mountain, they were relatively ordinary and were useless to him now. As for using the blood refinement art to refine blood beads, it was possible in Songlan World, but not in Lingwu Holy World. After all, the blood refinement art was a secret technique of the Blood Demon sect. In Songlan World, Chernzong could improve it with his own comprehension, but in Lingwu Holy World, there was no true inheritance, so the blood refinement art was useless. In other words, if Chernzong wanted to improve his body refinement art, He could only rely on bitter cultivation or other body refinement treasures. At this time, the spirit jade was delivered to Chunzong. Chunzong immediately accepted the spirit jade. The first 18 layers of the white cloud soaring heaven's art were extremely mysterious and contained a lot of content. Even with Chunzong's powerful soul condensation stage strength, it took him a full quarter of an hour to fully accept it. Back then, Fu Yunxiao had slowly accepted it for 3 days. This was closely related to the strength of one's soul. After the liquefied soul condensation stage, the strength of one's soul would be even more astonishing, and so would one's endurance. Chapter 1198. The Grand Cloud Refining Pill was the best spirit-grade pill available in White Cloud Mountain, capable of effectively increasing a Qi refining cultivator's cultivation. A single Grand Cloud Refining Pill was worth 100,000 sect contribution points, a frightening price. Moreover, each person could only take one, the second one would be ineffective. Chunzong had 1,000,000 contribution points, so naturally he could afford it. Soon, a Grand Cloud Refining Pill was delivered to Chunzong's hands. The Grand Cloud Refining Pill was only one size smaller than an egg. It was completely white and covered with cloud patterns. Upon closer inspection, the cloud patterns seemed to be floating, like the clouds in the sky floating slowly. It was very lifelike, and seemed to contain the mysteries of heaven and earth. Layers of halos spread out from the core, and a strong fragrance assailed Chunzong's nostrils. Taking a whiff, Chunzong felt comfortable all over, and the 8 spiritual wheels in his body seemed to rotate a little faster. This Grand Cloud Refining Pill should be enough to allow my cultivation to break through to the 9th layer of the Transcendent Realm, Chunzong thought to himself. His current Qi refining cultivation was at the peak of the 8th layer of the Transcendent Realm, and to break through to the 9th layer, he would first need to accumulate enough energy to reach the peak of the 8th layer before breaking through. After adjusting his breathing, Chunzong swallowed the Grand Cloud Refining Pill in one gulp. As soon as the pill entered his body, a majestic energy spread out from his stomach. It was like a tsunami that surged in all directions. It was powerful and majestic. A great cloud refining pill that was worth 100,000 contribution points was refined using 99 precious medicinal ingredients over a period of 81 days. Only 1 pill could be refined per year, and only 3 or 4 pills could be refined in a year. It contained an extremely vast and shocking energy, and when it was released, it was like a tsunami. The Grand Cloud Refining Pill contained an astonishing amount of energy and was not easy to refine. At the very least, early and mid-transcendent realm cultivators would not be able to refine it. Even if they swallowed it, their bodies would be crushed by the terrifying energy released from the Grand Cloud Refining Pill. Only late-stage transcendent realm cultivators were qualified to refine the Grand Refining Cloud Pill, but even then, they were only qualified and could only refine it bit by bit. For Chunzong to directly swallow it into his stomach and allow it to freely release its power, one had to be extremely strong or have an extremely powerful physique to be able to withstand the impact of this majestic power. Chunzong's physique was extremely strong, which was why he was confident that he could withstand the impact of the Great Cloud Refining Pill. His stomach rumbled as if thunder was tearing the void apart. Activating the White Cloud Genuine Skill, the 8 spiritual wheels spun at full speed, as if they could crush everything, and began to absorb and refine the power of the Great Cloud Refining Pill. The 18th level of the White Cloud Ultimate Skill was extremely powerful, and Chunzong's spiritual power was extremely pure. The power of the Grand Cloud Pill was also very pure, so the refining process was very smooth. The 8th spiritual wheel continued to expand and fill until it reached its limit. Then, the 8 spiritual wheels began to vibrate and resonate with each other. After the power of the Great Cloud Refining Pill passed through the 8 spiritual wheels, it began to construct a 9th spiritual wheel. As long as the ninth spiritual wheel was successfully constructed, Chernzong's cultivation would truly break through to the ninth layer of the transcendent realm and his strength would once again increase significantly. Accumulation, accumulation, accumulation. Chernzong's cultivation had long since surpassed the ninth layer of the transcendent realm, so such a breakthrough only required him to accumulate enough strength. Faintly, there seemed to be the sound of something opening and the ninth spiritual wheel began to condense. Although it was only an illusory image, it was enough to show that Chernzong's cultivation had broken through. Early ninth layer transcendent realm. The grand cloud refining pill continued to pour pure and majestic energy into the ninth spirit wheel, causing the ninth spirit wheel to become more and more solid and powerful. Stability. Chernzong's early ninth layer transcendent realm cultivation had been completely stabilized, but the power of the grand cloud refining pill had not been completely exhausted. Cultivation, 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 forgetting everything in the outside world and wholeheartedly cultivating. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Chernzong sat cross-legged, motionless, as if he had become a statue. At that moment, Chernzong felt a tyrannical aura erupt from his body, accompanied by the sound of thunder and the roiling sea of clouds. A tyrannical aura swept out in all directions, transforming into a storm that swept out in all directions. After 10 breaths, this terrifying aura storm came to a stop and was withdrawn into Chernzong's body. Chernzong raised his eyelids and an extremely sharp light pierced through the air, like a sword being unsheathed, piercing through the sky. The 9 spiritual wheels in his body slowly rotated, releasing an astonishing amount of power that was far stronger than before. Middle ninth layer transcendent realm. A single grand cloud refining pill had allowed Chernzong's cultivation to break through from the peak 8th layer transcendent realm to the middle 9th layer transcendent realm in just 5 days. Although the price of 100,000 sect contribution points was astonishing, one had to know that Chernzong's spirit energy was incomparably pure, several times purer than many cultivators in the same realm, so every time he broke through, the amount of spirit energy he needed to break through was far greater. From this, one could see the astonishing power of the grand cloud refining pill. If other cultivators took it and refined it, they might be able to break through to the late 9th layer transcendent realm. Of course, if other cultivators wanted to refine a single grand cloud refining pill, 5 days would be far from enough, it would take at least 10 times longer. After all, they did not have Chernzong's tyrannical physique, powerful spiritual sense, and extremely pure spirit energy. Unfortunately, the grand cloud refining pill could only be taken once. The second one would be ineffective. Otherwise, if he could exchange for 2 more pills, it would be enough to push his qi refining cultivation to the peak of the 9th layer transcendent realm. With his qi refining cultivation rising from the peak of the 8th layer transcendent realm to the mid-9th layer, Chernzong's overall strength had also improved significantly. However, this was still not enough. In the competition for the Saint Ascension opportunity half a year later, such strength was not guaranteed. He needed to become stronger, he needed to become even stronger. Chernzong began to ponder. How could he improve his cultivation base in the future? The transforming cloud array. This was a cultivation sealed world in White Cloud Mountain. It was an extremely rare cultivation sealed world that was not easily opened. Of course, opening such a cultivation sealed world consumed a lot of energy, so if one wanted to enter, they would need to pay a large amount of sect contribution points. 100,000. One had to pay 100,000 contribution points to enter, and there was no limit to how long one could stay. However, the transforming cloud array was not so easy to enter. Those who made it onto the cloud list would have a chance to enter the Great Cloud Array for free, so Chernzong naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. Even for those disciples whose cultivation had reached the peak of the 9th layer of the Transcendent Realm, this was a good opportunity. Chernzong immediately left the Cloud Hall and flew towards the transforming cloud peak, where the transforming cloud array was located. The transforming cloud hall on the transforming cloud peak. Within the transforming cloud hall was the transforming cloud array. There was an elder in the transforming cloud hall who knew Chern Zong's identity and purpose, so he immediately greeted him with a smile. Anyone who took first place in the Outer Sect Great Competition had extraordinary strength and potential. Moreover, this year's Outer Sect Great Competition was even more exciting than the previous ones. Chern Zong, inside the transforming cloud array, you will constantly encounter wave after wave of enemies. Every time you kill an enemy, you will obtain a trace of pure energy. This energy will be temporarily hidden in your body, and after you leave the transforming cloud array, you will be able to refine and absorb it. The elder explained with a smile, if you can't withstand it, you will be killed. Of course, you won't really die, but you will be sent out of the transforming cloud array. The elder's explanation was very simple, but it was very clear. Chern Zong understood it immediately. Look, this is the best record left behind by those who have entered the transforming cloud array. The elder pointed to a 10-meter-tall white stone tablet in the transforming cloud hall. It was the transforming cloud tablet. There were some names on the transforming cloud tablet left behind by those who have entered the transforming cloud array in the past. Chern Zong saw Fu Yunxiao's name, which was ranked 3rd. Gao Hongjing's name was ranked 8th. Bai Xia was ranked 9th. As for the 2nd place, it was a person called Zhou Longxiao. The 1st place was a person called Gu Shuyao. After Fu Yunxiao's name was the level he had reached in the transforming cloud array, which was the 17th wave. Zhou Longxiao, who was ranked 2nd, had reached the 18th wave, while Gu Shuyao, who was ranked 1st, had reached the 20th wave. Chern Zong still didn't know how difficult it was to break through the transforming cloud array, nor did he understand the concept of the number of waves. A door opened, and looking in, one could see a sea of clouds surging. The clouds were boundless and boundless. Go do your best, the elder said with a smile. Thank you, elder. Chern Zong bowed and strode inside, his figure disappearing into the sea of clouds. The door closed. I wonder how many waves this little brat will be able to reach? The elder muttered. Fu Yunxiao, who was ranked 1st on the previous cloud ranking, had reached the 18th wave, but at that time, Fu Yunxiao's cultivation had not yet reached the peak of the Transcendent Realm 9th layer. If the current Fu Yunxiao were to attempt it again, he would likely be able to reach the 18th wave. With the elder's ability and the slight aura fluctuations Chern Zong emitted, the elder was able to determine Chern Zong's current cultivation. Mid-Transcendent Realm 9th layer. However, the elder also knew that during the Outer Sect Great Competition, Chern Zong's Qi refining cultivation had been at the peak of the Transcendent Realm 8th layer. Now that his cultivation had clearly broken through, his strength would definitely be greater, causing the elder to look forward to it. Chern Zong stepped into the sea of clouds and the transforming cloud array immediately began operating. The white clouds in front of him were endless, as if they were a world of their own. It was incomparably mysterious. Then, the sea of clouds in front of him rippled and dispersed in all directions, revealing a flat area. It was like a plain of clouds, with no end in sight. Chern Zong's eyes narrowed slightly as he saw many figures appearing in the distance. They were snow-white giant wolves, and every one of them was as big as an elephant. They seemed to be made of clouds and snow, and they were charging forward like an army of thousands of men and horses. Their aura was astonishing. 100. There were a total of 100 giant snow-white wolves, their scarlet eyes exuding an incomparably terrifying aura, enough to cause a cowardly person to faint from fear. Each giant snow-white wolf had fangs in their half-opened mouths, giving them a terrifying appearance, as if they could easily crush gold. Each giant snow-white wolf exuded an astonishing aura. Early Transcendent Realm 7th layer. In other words, Chernzong was about to face 100 early Transcendent Realm's 7th layer opponents, not an ordinary early Transcendent Realm cultivator could compare to. However, Chernzong did not fear them in the slightest. Early Transcendent Realm's 7th layer opponents were simply too weak for him. Not to mention 100, even if there were 1,000, 10,000, or even 100,000 of them, Chernzong would not be afraid. Chapter 1199. Inside the Cloud Transformation Grand Array, the first wave of enemies was an early-stage Transcendent 7th layer Great Snow White Wolves. Chernzong only needed to slash out once and a sword light flashed through the air like a bolt of lightning, instantly piercing through the 100 wolves. After Chernzong defeated 100 wolves with a single sword strike, the wolves paused for a moment, then emitted a white radiance that expanded and exploded. 100 wisps of pure white cloud-like aura spread out from Chernzong like 100 rivers returning to the stream. Chernzong didn't dodge and instead carefully enjoyed the feeling of the 100 strands of qi entering his body. Like a thin stream of water, it was both cool and warm, very comfortable. After the 100 strands of qi entered his body, they quickly swam around and settled down in Chernzong's qi sea, waiting to be refined and absorbed. The second wave of enemies also appeared. This time, it wasn't a group of snow-white wolves, but 100 snow-white giant oxen, each of them a size larger than the other snow-white wolves. Each of these oxen had an incomparably strong body and were filled with astonishing strength. Lowering their heads, they charged forward at an astonishing speed, causing the white cloud ground to shake violently. The 2 horns on their heads were as sharp as knives and their auras had reached the mid-stage of the Transcendent 7th layer. Slash after slash, the 100 snow-white giant oxen charged forward, and before they could reach Chernzong, their bodies froze like statues before exploding into pieces. The third wave of enemies was 100 giant elephants. The scene of 100 snow-white giant elephants charging forward at the same time was undoubtedly astonishing. The imposing momentum they exuded was like a collapsing mountain, and the terrifying aura of a late-stage Transcendent 7th layer cultivator was pushed to the extreme. An ordinary early-stage Transcendent 8th layer cultivator wouldn't dare face such a charge head-on and would instead be forced to evade and use guerrilla tactics to eliminate them. However, Chernzong didn't use such tactics and simply slashed out with his sword. The 100 late-stage Transcendent 7th layer giant elephants were instantly pierced through and exploded into pieces. The fourth wave of enemies was 100 peak 7th layer Transcendent 7th layer giant apes, which also couldn't stop Chernzong's sword. The fifth wave consisted of 100 peak 7th layer Transcendent realm giant tigers, all of which were similarly slain by Chernzong. The opponents of the sixth wave were 100 cloud white cheetahs at the early stage of the Transcendent realm. They didn't appear directly in front of Chernzong, but instead snuck up on him from all directions like assassins. When they got close enough, they would suddenly burst forth and launch a lightning-fast attack. The early-stage Transcendent Realm White Cloud Cheetah was much stronger and more proficient in concealing itself. Like a hunter in the jungle, it was impossible to guard against a sudden attack. However, to Chernzong, they posed no threat at all, because Chernzong had already grasped all of them. With a shake of his right hand, sword lights shot out in all directions like a rainstorm. The 100 cloud-white cheetahs that were pouncing at him from all directions stopped in midair, and their sharp claws began to explode. The seventh wave of opponents was a mid-stage Transcendent Realm 8th layer cultivator. The eighth wave of opponents was a late-stage Transcendent Realm cultivator. The ninth wave of opponents was a peak Transcendent 8th layer cultivator. The 10th wave of opponents was a peak Transcendent 8th layer cultivator. The 11th wave of opponents was an early-stage Transcendent 9th layer cultivator, a qualitative improvement in strength from the previous wave. However, for Chernzong, the difference wasn't too big. After all, Chen Zong's strength was far above the peak Transcendent Ninth Layer, many times stronger than an early-stage Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivator. A single sword strike kill. The 12th wave of opponents was a mid-stage Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivator, still unable to pose any threat to Chen Zong. The 13th wave of opponents was a late-stage Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivator, a strength that far surpassed Chen Zong's current strength. Of course, Chen Zong's strength couldn't be judged by his cultivation alone. The 14th wave of opponents was a peak Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivator, 100 of them. Their combined strength began to put pressure on Chen Zong, but even so, they were unable to withstand a single sword strike from Chen Zong. The 15th wave of opponents was a peak Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivator, theoretically the limit of the Transcendent realm. The opponents of this wave were giant snow-white eagles that soared high in the sky, constantly circling in the air, letting out sharp cries that seemed capable of piercing through metal and shattering stone. Every giant eagle flapped its wings, and cold light flashed endlessly like the edge of a blade, directly tearing the sky apart. It was extremely terrifying. If it was just one eagle, it wouldn't be a big deal, but with 100 of them, even Chen Zong had to admit that he did feel some pressure, and it wasn't just ordinary pressure. "It's still not enough," Chen Zong muttered softly to himself. Suddenly leaping up, Chen Zong's heavy dragon sword tore through the sky. Kill! Under the tyrannical power, a heavy pressure pressed down on the surrounding area, immediately causing all the giant eagles within a 100-meter radius to come to a halt, their wings seemingly bound by an invisible force, unable to move for a time. The pressure from the 98,000 gene heavy dragon sword under Chen Zong's tyrannical strength was simply too tyrannical. Hong! A giant eagle's body exploded in an instant. A second eagle, a third eagle, a fourth eagle. As Chen Zong struck out with his sword again and again, there was nothing that his sword could not overcome. Although the 100-peak Transcendent Ninth Layer snow-white eagles put pressure on Chen Zong, it was only pressure, not a threat. Their attacks couldn't cause Chen Zong the slightest injury, but Chen Zong's sword was still able to kill them one by one. The 16th wave was different from the previous ones. It had the appearance of a human, but each of them was 2 meters tall and wielded a cloud-white long sword. Each of these cloud-white people exuded a tyrannical aura. The auras of peak Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivators were even more powerful. Such strength should be equivalent to an elite peak Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivator, much stronger than a standard peak Transcendent Ninth Layer cultivator. The auras of 100 powerful enemies suddenly locked onto Chen Zong, causing Chen Zong's expression to become slightly more serious. The pressure this time was slightly different from before, much greater. Asterisk shio shio shio. Asterisk when the sharp sound of breaking wind rang out, the 100 cloud-white figures had already closed in on Chen Zong with long blades in their hands. Their speed was astonishingly fast, and they swept across the sky like flowing light. Wherever the long blades went, an astonishingly sharp aura would pierce through Chen Zong and tear him apart. At the same time, Chen Zong was facing the attacks of more than a dozen powerful enemies, one after another, forming a deadly momentum. Chen Zong's expression was slightly solemn. His body did not move at all. When more than a dozen strong enemies were about to attack him, the heavy dragon sword shook and pierced through the sky, directly blocking the sudden attack of more than a dozen long swords. The tyrannical impact directly shattered more than a dozen long sword. The extremely terrifying impact of the power even made the dozen strong enemies pause. Asterisk boom. Asterisk like a meteor exploding, the dozen or so powerful enemies trembled violently, unable to bear the terrifying power contained in Chen Zong's heavy dragon sword and directly exploding. The next wave of more than a dozen enemies arrived and the same thing happened, all of them being blasted to pieces by Chen Zong. Just like that, Chen Zong passed through the 16th wave, the aura pouring into his body becoming thicker and more vigorous, constantly accumulating in his chi sea and condensing into a fist-sized mass that slowly rotated like a vortex. The 17th wave of opponents were also snow-white humanoids, but their heights were different. The taller ones could reach 2 meters, while the shorter ones were about 1.5 meters. Some of them held weapons such as sabers and swords, while others held weapons such as spears and halberds. Some even held short swords and daggers, and some were even barehanded. The cultivations of this wave of enemies were still at the peak of the transcendent 9th layer. After all, this was the highest level of the transcendent realm, but their auras were even more tyrannical than the 16th wave. Chen Zong could feel that the strength of these auras was comparable to the lower-ranked disciples on this year's cloud list. Those who could rank on the cloud list were geniuses among geniuses. In other words, Chen Zong was facing the joint attack of 100 elite geniuses. Chen Zong remembered that the record on the Transforming Cloud Steel in Transforming Cloud Palace stated that Fu Yunxiao had reached the 17th wave. In other words, he had passed the 16th wave but had not reached the 17th. With a swish, a short figure seemed to appear from the shadows, holding an extremely sharp dagger and stabbing towards Chen Zong's back, where his heart was. If his heart was pierced, his heart would be instantly torn apart by a terrifying force. However, Chen Zong seemed to have anticipated this and his figure flickered slightly, avoiding the other party's attack and slashing out with his heavy dragon sword. This sword strike was so profound that it was impossible to dodge. The short figure who had attacked him was instantly cut in half, and at the same time, Chen Zong was facing attacks from all directions, each one of them extremely powerful and astonishing. With a slash of his sword, all the attacks were blocked, and a tyrannical force erupted, directly shaking the attackers away. The heavy dragon's sword roared like a dragon and smashed a second strong enemy. Each of the strong enemies had amazing strength, but Chen Zong was stronger. With his chi refining cultivation at the 9th layer transcendent realm middle stage, Chen Zong's spirit chi was incomparably pure, greatly increasing his strength. If it was before, it would have been very difficult for Chen Zong to pass the 17th wave with just his chi refining cultivation. Kill. Chen Zong did not use his body refining cultivation, only his chi refining cultivation. Not long after, 100 strong enemies were killed by Chen Zong's sword one after another. Fighting relied on one's own cultivation and martial arts attainment. Only when all these aspects were combined could one be considered true strength. In such a big world, there were countless cultivators, and it was common for the weak to defeat the strong. The aura of the 17th wave was even more powerful and vigorous, causing the vortex of aura in Chen Zong's chi si to expand and become more solid. In the 18th wave, each aura was even more powerful. Zhou Longxiao, who was ranked second on the Transforming Cloud Steel, was stopped in this wave. Of course, if Fu Yunxiao were to try it now, he would definitely be able to pass this wave. As for whether he could pass this wave and enter the next one, it was hard to say, because the difference in difficulty between each wave was very obvious. The strength of each of the strong enemies in the 18th wave had reached the level of the middle of this year's cloud list. Perhaps 1 or 2 of them were nothing, but the pressure brought by 100 of them together was very strong, and Chen Zong could not help but change his expression. However, this level of strength attracted Chen Zong's attention, but Chen Zong still did not use his full strength. He still used his chi refining cultivation to fight against the enemies. Fight. Kill. With the heavy dragon sword in hand, Chen Zong's swordsmanship had reached an even more tyrannical level. The power of each sword move was superior to that of an ordinary spirit-grade high-rank sword art, and the exquisiteness of it was not the slightest bit inferior. Chapter 1200. The Cloud Transforming Peak was one of the many peaks in White Cloud Mountain. The Cloud Transforming Hall stood on top of the Cloud Transforming Peak. Usually, few people would visit this place, But now, there were quite a few people gathered in the cloud-transforming hall. There were a total of 3 people, all of whom were on this year's cloud ranking. They were all waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for the challengers to leave. At that moment, the cloud-transforming steel suddenly emitted a ray of light. The light formed a halo that quickly spread out and swept in all directions. The 3 people and the elder who were waiting were immediately attracted. They all turned their heads to look, and immediately, their faces were filled with shock. The rankings on the cloud-transforming steel suddenly changed. All the names dropped a level, and a brand new name and record appeared on the first place in the first row. Chernzong, the 20th wave. Moreover, the 20th wave was emitting a 7-colored luster. Chernzong! The 3 people suddenly exclaimed. They knew Chernzong very well. Wasn't he the champion of this year's Outer Sect Grand Competition and the champion of this year's Sky Ranking? His formidable strength was still fresh in their minds after a period of time, leaving an incomparably deep impression on them. The 20th wave. Chernzong actually made it to the 20th wave and broke the highest record in the history of White Cloud Mountain. He was ranked first, creating an even higher record. The elder who guarded the cloud-transforming hall opened his mouth wide in shock. Perhaps some disciples didn't know what the 7-colored light meant, but this elder was completely clear. The 7-colored light meant that Chernzong had made it to the 20th wave. If there was a 21st wave in the cloud-transforming array, then Chernzong should have made it to the 21st wave. However, the construction and operation of the cloud-transforming array required a huge amount of energy, and the consumption would be many times greater if one went further up. Too much energy would be consumed, and the construction would be even more difficult. The enemies in the 20th wave were the limit of the transcendent realm. It was the true limit, an unsurpassable limit. Because beyond that, one would no longer be in the transcendent realm, but in the half-saint realm. Gu Shuyao made it to the 20th wave but failed. Not long after she entered the 20th wave, she was defeated and sent out of the cloud-transforming array. Now, Chernzong had actually made it to the 20th wave, which was equivalent to passing the entire cloud-transforming array. One had to know that inside the transforming cloud array, it was forbidden to use strength beyond the transcendent realm. For example, the strength of a half-step saint was restricted. Without the strength of a half-saint, facing 100 opponents at the peak of the transcendent realm would undoubtedly be an unimaginable amount of pressure. It was already very difficult to win a one-on-one battle, and it was even easier to win a one-on-2 battle. It was basically impossible to win a one-on-3 battle. However, Chernzong had won, defeating and killing 100 transcendents who had reached the peak of the transcendent realm. The elder didn't know how Chernzong defeated him, because he couldn't imagine it at all. Right now, only Chernzong himself knew what was going on. In the 19th wave, Chernzong felt great pressure. He had to use his real strength and combine his qi refining cultivation and body refining cultivation. Otherwise, he would not be able to pass. The pressure of the 20th wave was even more unimaginable. Chernzong was under great pressure and threat every second. If he was careless, he would be hit. The strength of each enemy was too tyrannical, enough to be compared with the likes of Gao Hongjing. If it had been Gao Hongjing who entered, he would have been killed in less than 10 breaths. Even the stronger Bai Xia wouldn't be able to last more than 10 breaths. Fu Yunxiao would be better off, but Chernzong was sure that Fu Yunxiao would only be able to last 30 breaths of time. Whether he could kill the enemy or not was still unknown. Perhaps he could, but at most he would only be able to kill one enemy. If it had been Chernzong, who had just won first place in the Outer Sect Great Competition, challenging the transforming cloud array, he wouldn't have fared much better. At best, he would only be able to kill one enemy. However, the Great Refining Cloud Pill had allowed Chernzong to make a significant breakthrough in his qi refining cultivation. His strength had also increased, and he had taken another step forward. His strength, tenacity, and spiritual sense had all combined together, allowing Chen Zong to constantly wander around the 100 strong enemies, waiting for an opportunity to strike and kill them one by one. During this time, Chen Zong had also been hit by strong enemies. Fortunately, his physique was strong enough, and he had layers of defense, so he didn't suffer any serious injuries. Even so, Chen Zong felt like he was about to collapse after killing the 100 strong enemies. Chen Zong really didn't want to experience that feeling a second time. It was too painful, just like the torment of hell. Even someone as tenacious as Chen Zong felt pain and didn't want to experience it a second time. Although the process was extremely painful, so painful that Chen Zong did not want to try it a second time, the harvest was also very gratifying. At the very least, the fist-sized condensed aura that was entrenched in his qi emitted an astonishingly vigorous fluctuation. The qi he obtained from the 20th wave was no less than the sum of the previous 19 waves. Chen Zong didn't know how much his cultivation would increase after refining and absorbing the qi, but he guessed that it would be quite a bit. After breaking through the 20th wave of the transforming cloud grand array, Chen Zong also received a small amount of nourishment, his fatigue quickly disappearing, and his injuries quickly healed, allowing him to leave. Everyone's eyes fell on Chen Zong, especially the elder, whose eyes were filled with shock, disbelief, and an indescribable heat. This kind of heat seemed to want to pierce through Chen Zong and see through all of Chen Zong's secrets. After bidding farewell to the elder, Chen Zong quickly returned to his cloud hall and began to refine the condensed qi in his qi, leaving behind the elder who was still in shock. Refine, refine, refine. After entering seclusion, Chen Zong circulated the white cloud extreme true art with all his strength, forgetting about everything else, focusing on refining and absorbing the qi, constantly enriching his 9th spirit wheel. Breakthrough. Chen Zong's qi became more and more tyrannical. 9th layer transcendent realm late stage. After another breakthrough, his qi swelled once again. Peak 9th layer transcendent realm. 3rd breakthrough. Peak 9th layer transcendent realm. Chen Zong's qi became more and more tyrannical. However, this limit was only the threshold of one's cultivation and could not be considered the true limit. There was still room for improvement. His spiritual energy became even more vigorous and majestic. As it surged, it rolled up an extremely shocking tsunami, and rumbling sounds filled the air. When all of the qi had been refined by Chen Zong, his qi-refining cultivation finally reached the limit of the transcendent realm and could no longer be improved. Next, it's time to cultivate the white cloud high heavens art, Chen Zong thought. However, the white cloud high heavens art was a saint-grade mid-rank secret art, several hundred times more profound than the white cloud extreme true art. If one wanted to cultivate it, they needed to first comprehend its mysteries and essence, which would allow them to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Chen Zong began to meditate, relying on his powerful soul and perception to comprehend the white cloud high heavens art. As soon as he did, Chen Zong was dumbfounded. It was too difficult. Even if a true Saint Realm master wanted to comprehend the white cloud high heavens art, they would need to spend a lot of time and energy. Chen Zong's perception was indeed very high, but that was only relative to the transcendent realm. If compared to the average Saint Realm master, Chen Zong's perception was actually higher than the average Saint Realm master, comparable to the geniuses of the Saint Realm. Meditating, 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 Chen Zong gradually understood the mysteries of the first layer of the white cloud high heavens art. 5 days. Chen Zong spent a total of 5 days to comprehend the mysteries of the first layer of the white cloud high heavens art. The second layer's mysteries would only be more mysterious and difficult to comprehend. 7 days. Second layer. 9 heavens. Third layer. 11 days. Fourth layer. Just like that, a little more than a month passed. Half a month had passed since the half-year deadline was set, leaving only 4.5 months. 4.5 months sounded long, but in fact, it was very short. Just one more layer and I'll start cultivating, Chunzong secretly said. It took him 13 days to comprehend the 5th layer. At this speed, it would take him 15 days to comprehend the 6th layer. The further he went, the more time it would take. There was not enough time, so he could only put it aside for the time being. Chunzong also felt that the first 5 layers of the white cloud high heavens art were enough for him to cultivate now. After all, it would take a lot of time to cultivate a new secret art. It would also take a lot of time to cultivate to the next layer. What's more, he could not only cultivate the white cloud high heavens art, but also other aspects. For example, he could comprehend the Heart Sword Sutra, improve his Heart Sword force, White Cloud force, Flame force, and so on. 4 months was a little short. Chunzong could only try his best to improve himself. This was because the opportunity to become a saint was not in his hands directly. He had to fight for it himself. If he was just a little bit weaker and missed the opportunity, wouldn't that be a pity? Not only Chunzong, but the other top 10 masters on the cloud list were also doing their best to improve themselves, regardless of the cost. The White Cloud High Heavens art was a medium sacred level cultivation method. It was hundreds of times more difficult to cultivate than the White Cloud Ultimate skill. Even if Chunzong fully comprehended the profound mysteries of the first level, he similarly would not be able to quickly master it. Fu Yunxiao and the others had chosen the sacred level cultivation method in the last session. 5 years later, they had only cultivated to the 4th layer. Deducting the time when they did not cultivate, it was at least 3 years. It was really slow to cultivate to the 4th layer in 3 years. Of course, in Chunzong's opinion, it was slow, but in the eyes of others, it was not slow at all. Traces of power were running in his body. The White Cloud High Heavens art circulation route was really too complicated. If one did not have enough understanding and mastery of himself, it would be impossible to cultivate it. Fortunately, Chunzong's liquefied soul was strong, and his soul sense was also very strong. It was completely superior to that of a half-saint, so it was easier for him to control himself. The circulation route was more than 100 times more complicated than the White Cloud Ultimate skill. It took Chunzong 10 days to overcome it. Overcoming it only meant that Chunzong had just begun to cultivate the first layer. 20 days. It took Chunzong 20 days to cultivate the first layer of the White Cloud High Heavens art. Before reaching the half-saint realm, the power cultivated by the White Cloud High Heavens art was like a secret method. However, Chunzong tried it. The first layer was still very weak, not as good as his current spiritual power. Then, he began to cultivate the second layer. This time, it took him a month to cultivate the second layer. The power released when he activated it was almost the same as his current spiritual power. It seemed that he had to cultivate it to the 3rd layer at least, and the power after activation could surpass his current spiritual power. Chapter 1201. Time was like the clouds in the sky, seemingly motionless, but slowly moving forward without turning back. It had been exactly half a year since the end of the Outer Sect Great Competition. A figure appeared from Cloud Palace number 212, it was Chunzong. At the same time, a figure also appeared from Cloud Palace number 211, it was Yunyanxin. Seeing Chunzong, Yunyanxin smiled, like a white lotus blooming among thousands of green lotus leaves in a tranquil lotus pond. Senior sister. Junior brother. The two looked at each other and smiled. Chunzong noticed that Yunyanxin seemed to be different from half a year ago. Her face was more delicate, as beautiful as a painting, and her aura was also somewhat different from before, as if it contained a trace of nobility and mystery. The aura fluctuations emitted by Yunyanxin let Chunzong know that her cultivation had also reached the peak of the Transcendent Realm 9th layer, the true limit. After all, Yunyanxin was ranked 10th on the cloud list. If she wanted to raise her cultivation from the early Transcendent Realm 9th layer to the peak of the Transcendent Realm 9th layer in half a year, there were many methods, such as the Grand Cloud Refining Pill and the Transforming Cloud Array, etc. Junior brother, thank you, Yunyenxin suddenly said to Chenzong seriously. Thank me? Chenzong was confused, but Yunyenxin did not explain, instead smiling, making Chenzong even more confused. The two summoned their white clouds and flew up into the sky, quickly leaving for the Cloud Dragon Peak. The Cloud Dragon Peak was usually closed and would only open on special occasions, and today was the special occasion. The Cloud Dragon Peak was shrouded in mist, like a dragon coiling in the clouds, vivid and lifelike. As they approached, they seemed to hear a resounding dragon's roar echoing through the void. The top 10 of the cloud list had gathered on the Cloud Dragon Peak. When Chenzong and Yunyenxin landed, several people had already arrived. The 5th-ranked Ning Tianming and the 6th-ranked Yu Shuiyuan had already arrived, and the 3rd-ranked Bai Xie had arrived almost at the same time. At this moment, a vigorous and domineering aura fell from the sky like a meteor. Flames covered the sky and covered the earth, and the aura soared into the sky. With a hong sound, the fiery light fell, blasting open an enormous crater. Dust and smoke surged, and a sturdy figure stood tall. Chenzong didn't need to look at the person to know who it was. Gao Hongjing. After half a year, Gao Hongjing's aura had become even more vigorous and domineering, which also showed that his strength had improved greatly. Gao Hongjing, who had rushed over in a domineering manner, swept his gaze over the crowd. The intense light in his eyes was like a stream of hot magma, which made people's expressions change slightly. In the end, that gaze landed on Bai Xie. It was as if it wanted to burn Bai Xie. However, Bai Xie calmly looked back at it. Her gaze was tranquil and ethereal like the bright moon in the night sky. It was refined, elegant, and tranquil. Humph! Gao Hongjing coldly snorted, but it was like a volcanic eruption. Its power was astonishing, and it made Yu Shuiyuan and the others secretly shocked. In the past half a year, everyone had been bitterly cultivating and doing their best to improve their strength. However, some people improved very little. After all, at this level, it was very difficult to improve further. It was almost like a bottleneck, a barrier, unless they could break through to the half-step saint realm. However, some people could still continue to improve and become more powerful. This was the gap in one's own potential. Obviously, Ning Tianming, Yu Shuiyuan, and the others belonged to the category of transcendent. If they couldn't break through to the half-step saint realm, then it would be difficult for them to improve their strength. Of course, if they could cultivate a saint-grade secret art, they might be able to become stronger. Unfortunately, they didn't cultivate a saint-grade secret art. Moreover, taking a step back, with their talent and aptitude, even if they obtained a saint-grade secret art, it wouldn't be so easy to cultivate it. They would have to spend a lot of time and energy. Gao Hongjing's eyes narrowed as he looked at Chenzong. The blazing fire in his eyes seemed to want to burn Chenzong. However, Chenzong glanced at Gao Hongjing symbolically and ignored him. Instead, he was talking and laughing with Yunyenxin beside him. This scene made Gao Hongjing almost explode with anger. He had been bitterly cultivating for half a year, constantly imagining the scene of him meeting Chenzong, Bai Xie, Fu Yunxiao, and the others again. He wanted to use the powerful aura brought about by his improved strength to oppress them. No matter what, Chenzong should be looking at him like Bai Xie. He didn't expect that the other party would ignore him. This feeling made Gao Hongjing feel as if he had hit cotton with all his strength. It was soft and couldn't bear the force. It was extremely uncomfortable. Chenzong. Gao Hongjing opened his mouth, and was about to angrily rebuke, when Fu Yunxiao arrived. He landed right between Chenzong and Gao Hongjing. However, Fu Yunxiao didn't pay attention to Gao Hongjing. Instead, he turned his back to Gao Hongjing and faced Chenzong. His eyes were faintly flickering with a sharp light. He stared at Chen Zong with a trace of fighting spirit. Feeling Fu Yunxiao's gaze, Chen Zong turned his head and smiled as a greeting. He could feel that Fu Yunxiao's aura was a little stronger than half a year ago, which meant that his strength had improved again. However, he still hadn't reached the half-saint grade. Of course, Fu Yunxiao had the Hanyun Snowblade. Once it was unsealed, it would become a half-saint weapon and possess the power of the half-saint grade. Therefore, in a sense, Fu Yunxiao could be regarded as an expert of the half-saint grade. Of course, in this way, Chen Zong could also be regarded as a half-saint grade. The top 10 of this year's cloud list had all arrived and were waiting. At this moment, a graceful figure descended from the sky. Traces of indescribable ethereal aura spread out, making everyone feel as if they were about to fly. This graceful figure was a little hazy. Shrouded in dense clouds and mist, it added a bit of mystery. The aura, which was as high as the clouds in the sky, was indescribable. The newcomer's gaze swept across the top 10 of the cloud list. In an instant, everyone's body tensed up. They felt as if the gaze could see through everything and see through all secrets. Chen Zong knew that it was just a feeling. Not all secrets were really seen through. However, he was sure that under such a gaze, things that were not so deeply hidden would be seen through. An expert. An unimaginable expert. I'm the cloud-flying Taoist master. The graceful and hazy figure spoke gently, like a cool breeze in flowing clouds, like a willow leaf in spring water. There were 5 Taoists on White Cloud Mountain. The 5 Taoists were the foundation of White Cloud Mountain, and each of the 5 Taoists had a Taoist master. The 5 Taoist masters of White Cloud Mountain were the strongest experts on White Cloud Mountain. They were the unparalleled strongest experts. As for the strength of these 5 supreme experts, Chen Zong did not know. Was it the Saint Rudiment stage? Or was it stronger than the Saint Rudiment stage? It was difficult to know until one reached a certain level. Regardless, the cloud-flying Taoist master was one of the supreme experts on White Cloud Mountain. Chen Zong had seen the cloud-flying Taoist master before. It was also the cloud-flying Taoist master who came to the Outer Sect Grand Competition. As for the other 4 Taoist masters, he had never seen them before. Naturally, it was the cloud-flying Taoist master's first time seeing them. Sending a Taoist master to escort them showed how rare and important this opportunity to become a saint was. The cloud-flying Taoist master did not do anything. Clouds covered the entire area and turned into a white cloud that was 1,000 meters in size. Chen Zong and the other top 10 on the cloud leaderboard were carried on the white cloud that was 1,000 meters in size. They then flew away from Cloud Dragon Peak and toward the Sea of Clouds in the outside world. After passing through the Sea of Clouds, they quickly left White Cloud Mountain and flew into the distance. The speed was so fast that Chen Zong and the others were dumbfounded. Even with Chen Zong's amazing eyesight, he could only see a blur that flashed by. It was as if the scenery was stretched into blurry lines. Chen Zong tried to spread out his spiritual consciousness, but his expression changed. He felt that his spiritual consciousness could not sense anything. It was too fast. The speed was so fast that it was indescribable. It was so fast that his spiritual consciousness could not react. It was unimaginably fast. Since he could not see or sense anything, Chen Zong simply ignored it. The cloud-flying Taoist master spoke as well. Her gentle voice sounded like a string instrument under the moonlight. Everyone calmed down and listened attentively. They remembered every word she said clearly in their minds. What the cloud-flying Taoist master said was closely related to the Saint Ascension opportunity. Why was it said that only the top 10 on the cloud leaderboard were qualified to obtain the Saint Ascension opportunity? In other words, only the top 10 on the cloud leaderboard were qualified to compete for the Saint Ascension opportunity? It was because this opportunity was rare and there was a quota. White Cloud Mountain was not the only one who wanted to obtain the Saint Ascension opportunity. There were other forces as well. What were the other forces? There were 3 major 9-star forces in the Sky Pillar upper region. They were the 5 Extinction Heavenly Palace, the Tai Yen Mountain, and the mysterious Heaven Ancient Palace. In addition, there were 10 major 8-star forces. What? Aren't they 7? The 7 major 8-star forces were the Big Dipper Overlord Sect, the 7 Flames Glazed Palace, the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect, the White Cloud Mountain, the Dark Sun Moon Palace, the Ethereal Heavenly Palace, and the Absolute Refining Sect. The other 3 major 8-star forces were 3 ancient clans. They were the Huangfu clan, the Dongli clan, and the Yuchi clan. The 3 ancient clans would not recruit disciples from the outside. At most, they would recruit some guests or elders with different surnames. The threshold was very high. The 7 major 8-star forces were sect. In order for a sect to continue to develop, it had to recruit enough outstanding disciples from the outside. Clans and clans were different from sect. They were the continuation of the bloodline of the clan. They were particular about the purity of the bloodline and did not allow the bloodline to be mixed. Therefore, the 3 major clans basically did not marry outsiders. Even if they could, the outsiders must be very talented to be chosen by the 3 major clans. They must also change their surnames. Such clans would naturally not enter the ancient war city to select disciples like the 7 major 8-star forces. They would not give the cultivators of the middle and lower regions a chance either. The 3 major 9-star forces and 10 major 8-star forces made up a total of 13 powerful forces to compete for the Saint Ascension opportunity. One could imagine how difficult it would be and how fierce the competition would be. Without sufficient strength, there was no hope at all. It was hard to say whether the top 10 on the Cloud leaderboard could obtain a quota. As for the quota, there were not many, only 36 in total. If it was calculated on an average basis, there would be 36 spots for 13 forces, and each force would only obtain 2 or 3 spots. However, no matter if it was in terms of foundation or strength, the 3 great 9-star forces were undoubtedly stronger than the 10 great 8-star forces. Therefore, according to the estimation, the number of spots that the 3 great 9-star forces would be able to obtain would probably exceed the average. In this way, the quota that the 10 major 8-star forces could compete for would be even fewer. Chapter 1202. The Sky Pillar upper region was vast and boundless. Under the vast sky, 1,000-meter-long white cloud flew across the sky like a bolt of lightning, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. It was heading north of the Sky Pillar upper region. There were 4 upper regions in the Lingwu sacred world. At the center of the 4 upper regions was the Tianyuan sacred region, the most powerful region in the Lingwu sacred world. The Sky Pillar upper region was located to the south of the Tianyuan sacred region. According to the Flying Cloud Tao Master, the fight for the Saint Ascension opportunity would be held in the northernmost region of the Sky Pillar upper region. The Sky Pillar upper region was vast. If one traveled from White Cloud Mountain to the northernmost region with the speed of a transcendent, it would take at least a year. In theory, one would not need to stop, rest, or encounter any accident. In reality, there were many mountains, rivers, monster beasts, and forbidden zones along the way. With the strength of a transcendent, it was far too difficult and dangerous to traverse. Even a half-saint would have a slim chance of survival if they traveled all the way north. Even a true Saint Rudiment Realm Master would have to endure great danger. Therefore, no matter how strong a transcendent was, it was almost impossible for them to travel all the way from White Cloud Mountain to the northernmost region on their own. It had nothing to do with time. Even if the top 10 cultivators on White Cloud Mountain worked together to travel all the way north, they would not be able to do it. They would most likely die before they reached the northernmost region. A transcendent was not strong enough after all. There were many Saint Rudiment Realm Masters and monster beasts along the way. The Flying Cloud Tao Master was extremely fast. It took him less than a day to travel from White Cloud Mountain to the northernmost region. Moreover, he was traveling at his full speed. The northernmost region of the Sky Pillar Upper region was very cold. Looking from afar, it was snow-white. The sudden drop in temperature made everyone feel cold. Of course, as peak transcendent realm masters and geniuses, this kind of coldness did not affect them. On the contrary, everyone was admiring this beautiful scenery. The world was snow-white, wrapped in silver without the slightest bit of impurity. It was incomparably pure, making one feel a type of shock when they first saw it. Fu Yunxiao was the only one who had witnessed such a scene among the 10 people on the heavenly roll. However, Fu Yunxiao was also shocked. That was because the snow scene he saw when he was comprehending Shanshue's unique skill was like a pond compared to the ocean. It was an endless expanse of pure white without any other colors. This was a world of white snow. Looking further into the distance, one could see snowy mountains and icebergs standing on top of the white snow, like spears and giant swords pointing to the sky. Long time no see, Flying Cloud Dowlord. A loud and clear voice rang out, like a great bell ringing between the heavens and the earth. The voice reverberated, and it was filled with astonishing vigor and dominance. Earth Holy General, long time no see. The Flying Cloud Sect Master turned around and smiled. Earth Saint General. Chen Zong and the others were a little confused, but Fu Yunxiao, Gao Hongjing, and Bai Xia's expressions changed slightly. Obviously, they had heard of him before. However, no one had any intention of explaining. Chen Zong and the others did not know who the Earth Holy General was, but that did not stop them from guessing. The Flying Cloud Sect Master was one of the 5 strongest Dowlords in White Cloud Mountain. The greeting between the Earth Holy General and the Flying Cloud Sect Master was equal, indicating that they were on the same level. In fact, no one had a clear idea of how strong the Flying Cloud Sect Master was. They could only be sure that he was very, very strong. They speculated that he might be a supermaster at the peak Saint Realm. The strength of a Saint Realm Master was already amazing. It was unimaginable how strong the peak Saint Realm Master was. The Earth Holy General stood on an ancient giant door-like artifact, hovering in the air, and flew to the side of the Flying Cloud Sect Master's white cloud. Besides the Earth Holy General's imposing figure that was more than 2 meters tall, there were 10 other figures on the giant door. The 10 figures were all clad in armor. Some of them looked like heavy armor, which was very domineering. Some of them looked like close-fitting light armor, which made them look surprisingly agile. The 10 figures all looked young, in their 20s or 30s. They were the candidates who were going to participate in the fight for the Saint Realm opportunity. 9 men and 1 woman. They were the disciples of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect, one of the top 10 8-star forces. They specialized in body refinement. Chen Zong's sharp spiritual consciousness could clearly sense the aura exuding from their bodies. It was the aura of body refinement. It was very powerful, even more powerful than his own body refinement aura. Regarding this, Chen Zong did not feel ashamed or any other negative emotions. The Titan Soul Heavenly Sect was a sect that specialized in body refinement. It was one of the strongest body refinement forces in the Sky Pillar Upper Province. It had a complete and powerful body refinement inheritance and abundant body refinement resources. Chen Zong's body refinement started with the spirit rank low-grade true flame body refinement technique. The other body refinement resources were also obtained through his own efforts. What really strengthened his body refinement strength was when he returned to the Kanglan world to improve the blood refinement technique and refine a large amount of blood bead. However, all of these added together could not compare to the foundation of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect. After all, the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect was an 8-star force that specialized in body refinement. They had stood tall for tens of thousands of years and accumulated countless resources. Their foundation was shocking, and they even had the experience and guidance of body refinement experts in the sect. Therefore, Chernzong did not find it strange that the disciples of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect were inferior to the disciples of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect in body refinement. Moreover, they were the 10 most outstanding Outer Sect disciples. The 10 disciples of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect stood upright on top of the ancient giant gate. A powerful aura surrounded their bodies, as if it was repelling the air. Their eyes were sharp and contained a shocking might that swept across the faces of the 10 disciples of the White Cloud Mountain. They did not speak, but there was a hint of battle intent in their eyes. As an 8-star force and one of the top 10 Outer Sect disciples, their strength was naturally not weak. The Titan Soul Heavenly Sect, a body refinement sect, was also famous for their belligerence. After all, a body refinement cultivator's physique was extremely strong, and their vitality was incomparably vigorous. They would not usually cultivate any cultivation techniques that could calm the heart. Moreover, their cultivation method was to fight other than to cultivate quietly. They would fight with strong opponents and break through their limits in the midst of battle. One by one, the disciples of the sect rushed over and appeared in the surroundings. Shocking heat filled the air as if it was burning the sky, and it immediately brought a trace of warmth to the cold world. Everyone turned around and saw a huge 7-colored flame that looked like a lotus flower flying rapidly towards them. It exuded 7 different types of heat waves. The 7 flames glazed palace. Chernzong squinted his eyes and saw the people on top of the 7-colored lotus flame of the 7 flames glazed palace. There was no doubt that one of them was the strongest of the 7 flames glazed palace, and the other 10 were the top 10 Outer Sect disciples of the 7 flames glazed palace. Chernzong recognized one of the top 10 disciples. It was Lu Yenji, who had threatened and tempted him to get the purple cloud primordial flame in the ancient war city. Chernzong did not expect that after 5 years, Lu Yenji would be able to get into the top 10 of the 7 flames glazed palace. However, since he and Yun Yenxin were able to get into the top 10 of the White Cloud Mountain Outer Sect, it was not impossible for Lu Yenji to get into the top 10 of the 7 flames glazed palace Outer Sect. After all, Lu Yenji was also a genius. Lu Yenji's gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on Chernzong's face. His face was full of shock. He naturally recognized Chernzong. After all, back then, Chernzong had a kind of earth flame. Lu Yenji had tried to ask for it but was rejected. It left a deep impression on him. However, in Lu Yenji's opinion, even if Chernzong's talent was good, it was impossible for him to improve so quickly in just 5 years and get into the top 10 of the White Cloud Mountain Outer Sect disciples. After all, 5 years ago, Chernzong's cultivation was very low, only Transcendent Realm Level 4. Could it be that the top 10 of the White Cloud Mountain Outer Sect disciples were of low quality? That shouldn't be the case. As an 8-star force, White Cloud Mountain shouldn't be weaker than the 7 flames glazed palace. Even if they were weaker, the difference wouldn't be too big. Lu Yenji couldn't understand and was very surprised. He couldn't sense the aura fluctuations that Chernzong deliberately hid, so he didn't know what cultivation level Chernzong had reached. Humph, he's probably the 10th place of the White Cloud Mountain Outer Sect competition, Lu Yenji thought to himself. The gap between the 1st place and the 10th place was very big. Not to mention the 1st place, even the gap between the top 3 and the 10th place was very big. The 10th place might not even be able to withstand a single attack from the top 3. At least, that was the case in the 7 flames glazed palace. Chernzong's talent was extraordinary. After 5 years of cultivation and hard work at White Cloud Mountain, his strength had improved greatly. Adding in some luck, it was not impossible for him to get into the top 10 of the White Cloud Mountain Outer Sect competition. Humph, I'm the 7th place of the 7 Flames Glazed Palace Outer Sect competition. Lu Yenji thought to himself, This time, if I have the slightest chance, I'll take your earth wonder flame. Lu Yenji entered the 7 flames glazed palace for the 7 wonder flames of heaven and earth. After entering, he realized that it was very difficult to obtain the 7 wonder flames of heaven and earth. After all, the wonder flames of heaven and earth were very precious and difficult to produce. To obtain them, one would either have to pay a lot of sect contribution points or be highly valued by the sect. Lu Yenji tried his best, and was rewarded with an Earth Wonder Flame because he got into the top 10 of the outer sect competition. After spending a lot of time, he finally merged his Earth Wonder Flame with the 7 Flames Glazed Palace's Earth Wonder Flame to become a new Wonder Flame of heaven and earth with greater power. If he could obtain Chernzong's mysterious Earth Flame and spend some time to merge with it, then the power and potential of his mysterious Earth Flame would be able to increase further. Eventually, he would reach the peak of the mysterious Earth Flame and his own strength would increase greatly. Thinking of this, Lu Yenji's heart burned with excitement. Chernzong, your Earth Wonder Flame is mine. Lu Yenji immediately transmitted his voice to Chernzong. His voice was filled with ridicule, provocation, and confidence as it rang in Chernzong's ears. Chernzong looked at Lu Yenji in surprise but did not respond. With his powerful spiritual sense, Chernzong could sense Lu Yenji's cultivation. It was at the peak of the 9th layer transcendent realm. Not bad, but Chernzong did not feel the slightest threat from him. Chapter 1203. In order to have a great body, the Dominator of 6 realms has started working out. He's got an 8-pack and a big chest. Those from the Tiangang Overlord sect arrived as well. 8-star forces such as the Dark Hall of Sun and Moon, the Ethereal Heavenly Palace, and the Refinement Clan arrived one after another. Powerful auras spread out from every corner, causing ripples in the surroundings. It was as if invisible waves were crashing in all directions, stirring up layers of wind that kept blowing away. At that moment, an extremely sharp screech resounded throughout the world. It was so loud that it could shatter metal and rock, causing everyone's eardrums to vibrate. A golden light that seemed to be burning with terrifying flames quickly approached from one side of the sky. The golden light spread out like a raging tide, illuminating an area of the void. In an instant, the golden light approached and appeared thousands of meters away from everyone. It suddenly stopped and revealed itself. It was a giant bird. It was completely golden as if it was made of gold. Its appearance was like an eagle, and its eyes were extremely sharp as if they could pierce through the sky. There were 6 people standing on the back of the giant bird. One of them was a middle-aged man who emitted an indescribable aura. He should be a powerhouse at the same level as the Flying Cloud Path Master. As for the other 5, they should be people who were going to participate in the fight for the opportunity to become a saint because they all looked very young. That's the Huangfu clan. The Flying Cloud Path Master's gentle voice rang out in everyone's ears. They immediately understood who those people were. They were the Huangfu clan, one of the 3 8-star clans. The clans pay attention to their bloodline. They are not as numerous as the sect in terms of numbers, but they are superior in terms of quality, the Flying Cloud Path Master added. It was a very simple sentence, but it contained a lot of information and content. None of them were ordinary people, so they analyzed the Flying Cloud Path Master's words thoroughly. To ensure the continuity and purity of their bloodline, the 3 8-star clans usually did not marry with outsiders, and they rarely recruited outsiders. No matter how many generations a clan had, it was impossible for them to be unscrupulous. Therefore, in terms of numbers, they could not be compared to the sect that had always been recruiting disciples. However, the sect had always been recruiting disciples. Although they had set up many thresholds to pick out the most talented disciples, not all of them could become powerhouses. The sect's way of doing things was more like washing away the sand with great wave. There would always be pearls that would be found and become strong enough to ensure the inheritance and continuation of the sect. The three great clans, on the other hand, had preserved the purity of their bloodlines. Although the total number of people was relatively small, the number of experts that appeared from generation to generation would be greater. As a result, there were only 5 people from the Huangfu clan who had come to compete for the opportunity to become a saint. However, all of them were dignified and their auras were condensed and powerful. They appeared to be extraordinary and were all very powerful. Everyone's gazes swept over them as if they were observing which one was more powerful. The 5 people from the Huangfu clan also swept their sharp gazes over and observed the others. Every single person here could become an opponent. Chen Zong noticed that the eyes of the people from the Huangfu family were a little different from the others. There seemed to be a layer of faint and imperceptible golden light on their black pupils. The golden light was like water, very pure, and contained a trace of nobility. It was as if they were born to be extraordinary. In fact, the bloodlines of the 3 great clans were indeed extraordinary. Almost all of them were bloodline cultivators and had extraordinary bloodlines. One could tell just by looking at Gao Leping. He was originally considered a decent genius, but when compared to the entire outer sect of Mount Baiyun, he could only be considered ordinary. However, because he had awakened the fierce tiger bloodline, he immediately became extraordinary and surpassed many disciples. If Gao Leping's talent and other things were originally at the lower level of the outer sect disciples of Mount Baiyun, then after awakening the fierce tiger bloodline, he had reached the middle level or even surpassed it. He could be considered above average. The changes brought about by a good bloodline awakening to a cultivator were astonishing. Most of the people from the 3 great clans were bloodline cultivators. When they reached a certain level, they would awaken their bloodline, and their talent and strength would also skyrocket. And these 5 people were the strongest of the younger generation of the Huangfu clan. The one that caught Chen Zong's attention the most was one of the 5 people, who was also one of the 2 women from the Huangfu clan. She wore golden armor that seemed to be woven from the feathers of a golden eagle, perfectly setting off her tall and curvaceous figure. There was an indescribable vigor and beauty about her. It was a combination of wildness and nobility, and was full of astonishing attractiveness. Under her golden feathered crown, her black hair fluttered like silk. Her face and skin were as gentle as fine jade, and a halo was naturally produced. Her facial features and face were very well matched, and there was a trace of indescribable heroic spirit in her exquisiteness, like the heroic spirit of a Valkyrie. Her entire body exuded a kind of lofty aura like that of a princess. While it made people revere her, it also made people have an impulse to conquer her. Chen Zong noticed her not only because of her extraordinary beauty and unique temperament, but more importantly because of the faint aura fluctuations on her body, which made Chen Zong feel unique and powerful. This was a strong opponent. In an instant, Chen Zong came to a conclusion. Of course, this woman's grasp of her own aura was also very astonishing. Without a strong spiritual sense and perception like Chen Zong, it would be impossible to detect her. As for the other woman, although she also had an extraordinary appearance and temperament, she did not give Chen Zong that unique feeling, so Chen Zong did not pay too much attention to her. However, Chen Zong took a few more glances at the giant golden bird that looked like an eagle or a rock. It was very powerful. It was the golden holy eagle. Chen Zong estimated that he could not block the giant bird's claw. At this moment, a green light illuminated a corner of the space, and a strange sound like a snake hissing and a dragon roaring faintly resounded through the world. A cyan snake that was 100 meters long appeared in front of everyone. Its ferocious and overbearing appearance, as well as its extremely cold eyes, was unforgettable. Just one look at it would send chills down everyone's spine. This was the green glow snake. It was a very famous and ferocious demonic beast. There were 6 people standing on the back of the snake. One was a middle-aged man, and the other 5 were young people, 4 men and 1 woman. These people were from the Dongli clan. Boom, boom, boom. The earth was shaking. In another direction, a black and red light spread rapidly, like a black and red flame, and turned into a wave of fire that swept over violently. The terrifying aura was extremely ferocious, as if it had emerged from hell. Everyone was shocked and turned their heads to look. In the northwest direction, a giant tiger that was 100 meters long with black and red stripes and burning with black and red flames was running wildly. This black and red giant tiger had 2 long sword-like teeth, which looked very frightening. The teeth were white and covered with complicated black and red patterns. A few more glances at it would make people feel dizzy. The shoulders of the giant tiger were covered with ferocious spikes. Each spike was several meters long and looked like a strange pair of wings. The giant tiger's tail was constantly swinging, and the end was burning with a black and red flame that was extremely scorching. This was the abyssal demon tiger. The 6 people on the abyssal demon tiger's back were from the Yuchi clan. Since then, all 10 8-star forces had gathered, and many 7-star forces had also come in various ways. There were 10 8-star forces, and even more 7-star forces. There were more than 30 who were qualified to come, and each of them was a stronger force among the 7-star forces. Ordinary 7-star forces couldn't be compared to them. Each 7-star force would get 5 spots. There would be more than 160 disciples from the 30 or so 7-star forces participating in the competition. There would be 15 disciples from the 3 great 8-star clans and 70 disciples from the 7 great 8-star sections. In total, there would be more than 200 disciples participating in the competition. However, the 3 9-star forces hadn't arrived yet. The 3 9-star forces were the strongest forces in the Sky Pillar Upper Province. They were invincible forces, and they had more spots. Each of them had 20 people, so there were 60 people in total. In total, there would be more than 300 people participating in this competition. However, only 36 people would get the opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. 36 out of 300 people were competing, which was a ratio of 10 to 1. It was unknown how intense the competition would be. Even now, no one knew how they were going to compete for the 36 spots to enter the Saint Realm. A mystical mountain descended from the sky as if it had appeared out of thin air. It was incomparably mystical, and all kinds of mystical light shone around the 1,000-meter-tall mountain. The mountain landed on one side, emitting a shocking aura. 21 figures stood on the mountain. One of the figures was an old man in a gray robe. He had his hands behind his back, and his expression was indifferent. He gave off a feeling of superiority, and his eyes contained endless mystical light. The 9-star force, Tai Yin Mountain, had arrived. Behind the old man were the 20 disciples of Tai Yin Mountain. Then, the mysterious Sky Ancient Palace arrived. The mysterious Sky Ancient Palace was a huge palace that shone with mystical light. As soon as it appeared, it brought along endless rays of light. The palace door opened, and a beautiful and noble figure in palace attire walked out. Every step she took was filled with an indescribable charm, as if she was stepping on Taoist rhymes. The patterns on her purple palace attire flowed slowly like water, and it was too much for the eyes to take in. The face of the supreme expert of the mysterious Sky Ancient Palace couldn't be seen clearly, but there seemed to be a hint of a smile. 20 figures appeared behind her, and each of them had a mystical aura. They were the disciples who were going to compete for the Saint Ascension opportunity. Rumbling sounds were heard, and a shocking aura soared into the sky, sweeping over from afar. It was sharp, domineering, vigorous, and boundless. In an instant it attracted everyone's attention. Tens of thousands of rays of light shot out from the east, illuminating a corner of the sky and rapidly spreading out. The light was incomparably blazing, like a scorching sun. A huge flying boat seemed to be sailing out from the sun. There were 5 flags on the flying boat, and they were scattered on 5 sides, fluttering in the wind. 5 Jew Heavenly Palace. There were 3 9-star forces in the Sky Pillar upper region, but the 5 Jew Heavenly Palace was widely recognized as the most powerful force in the Sky Pillar upper region. As if it was the finale, the 5 Jew Heavenly Palace appeared last. As soon as it appeared, the rays of light spread across half the sky, and the blazing rays of the sun shone brightly. The flying boat was 1,000 meters long, and it shone with 5 different colors. Each of the colors was so dazzling that it was difficult to look at it directly. Extremely high profile, extremely domineering, extremely disdainful. It was as if it was announcing to the world that the 5 Jew Heavenly Palace was the most powerful force. Chapter 1204. 3 9-star forces, 10 8-star forces, more than 30 7-star forces. All of them were present. There were more than 300 people participating in the competition for the Saint opportunity. Each of these 300 people was a genius among geniuses. They were all elites among geniuses. If they were in the outside world, they would be able to sweep through a region. Now, they were gathered here to compete for the Saint opportunity. Perhaps, even if they really obtained the so-called Saint opportunity, they might not be able to break through to the Saint realm, but it could increase their chances of breaking through. Nothing was 100% absolute, but there was a distinction between high and low. Among the 20 disciples of 5 absolute heavenly palace, there were 2 people Chen Zong knew. One was Wu Lingkong. Seeing Wu Lingkong, Chen Zong was happy for him. Wu Lingkong also saw Chen Zong. He was stunned at first, but then a smile appeared on his face. On the fierce ancient battlefield, the 2 of them appreciated each other and formed a friendship. Although they did not enter the same sect and had not met for 5 years, it did not affect the friendship between the 2. True friends, even if they had not met or contacted each other for many years, when they met one day, they would still be as close as before. The other person was Lu Yijue. Lu Yijue had a sneer on his face as he stared at Yun Yanxin. He seemed to be mouthing, "Senior sister Yu, we meet again." Such a simple sentence seemed to be a greeting, but only Yun Yanxin knew how much pride and provocation it contained. Seeing Lu Yijue again, Yun Yanxin's expression changed. Her eyes were filled with fierce murderous intent. She was originally a disciple of the Central Territory's Thunder Wind sect. She had never thought of leaving the Thunder Wind sect to enter the fierce ancient battlefield or the Upper Territory. It was only because she wanted to kill Lu Yijue. Unexpectedly, not only did she fail to kill Lu Yijue, but Lu Yijue had also become a disciple of a 9-star force, 5 absolute heavenly palace. The gap between a 9-star force and a 7-star force was unimaginable. With Lu Yijue's talent, it was unimaginable how powerful he would become in the future after being nurtured by a 9-star force. Yun Yanxin once felt despair. Fortunately, he had also entered White Cloud Mountain. Now, through his continuous efforts, his strength had greatly improved. Lu Yijue had to be killed no matter what. This was Yun Yanxin's initial goal and desire, but it had quietly evolved into an obsession. Lu Yijue's provocative and playful look made Yun Yanxin's killing intent even more intense. It was like a volcano's magma that was about to erupt. "Senior sister, calm down." Chen Zong's voice suddenly sounded in Yun Yanxin's ears. With a trace of rhythm, Yun Yanxin instantly woke up and got rid of the influence of the killing intent. This was not a good place to make a move. Moreover, even if he made a move, it would be difficult to kill Lu Yijue. Therefore, suppressing his killing intent was the best way to calm himself down. Seeing Yun Yanxin on the verge of exploding with killing intent and suddenly regaining his calmness, Lu Yijue was suddenly startled. This was not in line with his expectations. Yunyanxin's talent was very high and was not inferior to his. Although his strength had greatly improved after entering the 5-Ju Heavenly Palace, Yunyanxin had also entered White Cloud Mountain. With her talent, her strength would definitely increase rapidly. Lu Yijue was very clear that Yunyanxin was determined to kill him. It was not a good feeling to be remembered by someone with outstanding talent and strength. Therefore, when Lu Yijue saw Yunyanxin, he wanted to provoke Yunyanxin and let Yunyanxin make a move at this time. Maybe he could take this opportunity to use the power of the 5-Ju Heavenly Palace to kill her. Even if he could not kill her, he could still severely injure her or make her lose the fight for the opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. In short, he would do whatever was beneficial to him. He did not expect Yunyanxin to be able to calm down under the extreme killing intent that was about to erupt. This made Lu Yijue even more wary. Yunyanxin looked away and no longer looked at Lu Yijue because Lu Yijue would constantly provoke her secretly. Then, it was time to announce the method to compete for the quota. In the deepest part of the snow domain, which was also the end of the Sky Pillar upper region, there was a secret realm called the Flying Snow Secret Realm. More than 300 genius disciples from various sect forces would depart from here and enter the Flying Snow Secret Realm with the fastest speed. There was a time limit of 3 days. In other words, if they could not enter the Flying Snow Secret Realm within 3 days, they would be eliminated and would not be able to participate in the next stage of the competition, let alone the opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. The second stage was to enter the Flying Snow Secret Realm and hunt the snow beasts in the Secret Realm to obtain the snow crystals. After finding the 36 Secret Realm entrances, they would use the power of the snow crystals to open the Secret Realm entrances and leave the Flying Snow Secret Realm through the Secret Realm entrances. Each Secret Realm entrance could only be opened once. After that, it would be useless. In other words, only 36 people could leave the Flying Snow Secret Realm through the Secret Realm entrances. They would be the winners of the opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. The others would be eliminated and would not have the opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. The competition sounded simple, but they would have to experience it themselves to know the real situation. Go, do your best, the Flying Cloud Sect Master said to the 10 disciples and encouraged them. At the same time, many figures leaped into the sky. They were like eagles, tigers, feathers, and arrows. They were all different, but they were all very fast. 3 days was not a short time. With everyone's speed, they would be able to travel very far in 3 days. However, no one knew what kind of situation or danger they would encounter in the snow domain that would affect their speed. The opportunity was to be fought for by oneself and had nothing to do with others. Since that was the case, even disciples from the same sect would not give way to each other. An opportunity that could be given away was either not of much use to him, or the other party was very important to him. Everyone wanted the opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. How could they give it away? If they wanted to give it away, why would they come here? Fight. Chunzong's figure was erratic. It was as if he was riding the wind and flying through the sky. His speed was much faster than half a year ago. In fact, after one's strength reached the limit of the transcendent realm, one's speed would also reach the limit. Without external help, it would be more difficult to improve further. However, if one cultivated a high-level movement technique and cultivated it to a high level, it could also increase one's speed. If one summoned riding White Cloud and flew through the air, their speed would indeed be faster than their normal limit, but it could not be compared to using a movement technique. It was because of this that the 10 disciples of White Cloud sect did not summon riding White Cloud. They chose to use their movement techniques to increase their speed. In the past half a year, Chunzong had not neglected other aspects of cultivation besides cultivating the White Cloud soaring sky technique. He wanted to comprehend the Heart Sword Sutra. He exchanged the lower part of the illusory cloud path for comprehension and cultivation. In addition, Chernzong, who had enough contribution points in the sect, also exchanged the upper and middle parts of the flying cloud path and the upper and middle parts of the refining cloud path. After his soul had been liquefied, Chernzong's tolerance had increased. His comprehension had also been further enhanced. In addition to his various accumulations, the speed at which he comprehended the flying cloud path and refining cloud path was more than 10 times faster than when he comprehended the illusory cloud path. Otherwise, Chernzong would not have dared to do so in the past. After comprehending the essence of the flying cloud path master's speed, not only could he use a faster sword, but he could also increase his movement speed. The subtleties of the 5 white cloud paths were not one-sided. It was comprehensive. As Chernzong continued to comprehend and cultivate, his understanding of this became more and more profound. As the champion of White Cloud Mountain's Outer Sect Grand Competition, Chernzong was not only the strongest, but also the fastest. In the blink of an eye, he surpassed the other disciples of White Cloud Mountain and flew forward. Perhaps some people would think that since Chernzong was so strong and so fast, he should support each other with his fellow disciples. It sounded right, but if one thought about it carefully, it was ridiculously wrong. The competition for the opportunity to become a saint was an individual competition, not a group competition. If it was a group competition, then whichever sect or faction arrived first would be able to obtain the opportunity to become a saint. In that case, Chernzong would definitely team up with the others. However, this was a competition between more than 300 people. Even if they were from the same sect, they would still be competing. Asking Chernzong to lower his own speed so that he could keep pace with the others was akin to ruining this rare opportunity. "Senior sister, I'll go first." Chernzong transmitted his voice to Yunyenshin. "Junior brother, I'll catch up as well," Yunyenshin replied. In fact, Chernzong was not the only one who was like this. The others were the same. Those who were faster were doing their best to move forward, while those who were slower could only try to catch up. Gradually, Chernzong widened the distance between him and the others of White Cloud Mountain. Above the snow region, pure white snow covered an endless expanse. It seemed to be endless. No one knew how long it would take to reach the end of the snow region from the moment they entered. In short, even with everyone's strong eyesight, they could not see it. Even the snow-capped mountains in the distance made everyone feel very far away. More than 300 people seemed like a lot at first. However, as everyone continued to move forward with their movement techniques, the distance between them gradually widened. It looked like little black dots scattered on the snowy plains. Looking down from above, they looked like a group of scattered ants. Chernzong used his movement techniques to move forward quickly. He also paid attention to his surroundings. His speed wasn't the fastest. The 3 9-star forces, the 20 disciples of the 5 ultimate heavenly palace, Tai Yen Mountain, and the mysterious Heaven Ancient Palace, were all astonishingly fast. The fastest 3 were even faster than him. Among the 3 great clans, Chernzong also noticed the woman with a very unique temperament. She seemed to be charging forward on the battlefield, sweeping through everything before her. Her speed was extremely astonishing. Her body seemed to be surrounded by golden flames, as if flames were burning fiercely. The golden flames floated behind her, like ribbons or wings, causing her speed to be even faster. She seemed to be charging on the battlefield, but also as sharp as a golden holy eagle. There was also an indescribable nobility. On the Dongli clan's side, they used their movement technique. They seemed to be slithering like a green snake. They seemed to be winding, but their speed was also astonishing. Chapter 1205. I feel like my hands are going to be crippled. It's so sore. The snow region was vast, and there were no other colors. At first, it was breathtaking, but after looking at it for a while, one would start to feel bored. This was because they were all white, pure white, boundless white, a white without any signs of life. Moreover, everyone was here to compete, not to enjoy the scenery. No matter how beautiful the scenery was, it was nothing compared to the opportunity to become a saint. When they reached the peak in the future, they could see any kind of beautiful scenery, and they could enjoy it with a more refined attitude. Compete. They were competing for opportunities, for time, for their future, and for the general trend. Among their peers, whoever could take a step forward and seize the opportunity would have a great chance to surpass the others and surpass the previous generation. Fortuitous encounters did not appear out of thin air and fall onto one's head like a pie. One had to fight for it and fight for it. Even if one was lucky enough to get an opportunity out of nowhere, without enough ability, one would not be able to benefit from the opportunity. On the contrary, one might even lose one's life. A group of powerhouses flew into the sky and looked down, as if they were watching a group of ants running for a long distance. In fact, with everyone's speed, even if they were the slowest, they could cross the vast snow region in 3 days and reach the end of the snow region, then enter the flying snow mystery realm. But was it that simple? No. In theory, there shouldn't be any unexpected incident. However, in this snowy region, it wouldn't be so safe. At this moment, more than 300 people had separated from each other. Simply put, the 300 people could be divided into 4 echelons according to their speed. The first echelon was the one at the front, and they had the least number of people, only a dozen. The second echelon was a few thousand meters away from the first echelon, and there were more than 40 of them. The third echelon was a few thousand meters away from the second echelon, and there were more than 70 of them. The fourth echelon was also a few thousand meters away from the third echelon, and they had the most people. A few thousand meters was actually something that could be traversed in a short span of time, but the fourth echelon was unable to catch up to the third echelon. Similarly, the third echelon was unable to catch up to the second echelon, and the second echelon was unable to catch up to the first echelon. The distance between them was unknowingly increasing. There were more than 40 people in the second group. Half of them were from the 3 9-star forces, and the rest were mostly from the 10 8-star forces. There were even 2 7-star forces. This caused the experts in the sky to be a little surprised. However, after giving it some thought, he found it reasonable. Although a 7-star organization was inferior to an 8-star organization, or even a 9-star organization, there were bound to be 1 or 2 outstanding geniuses who could rival the geniuses of 8-star or 9-star organizations. As for the third echelon, a few of them were disciples from the 3 great 9-star forces, some of them were disciples from the 10 great 8-star forces, and most of them were disciples from 7-star forces. Most of the people in the fourth echelon were disciples of 7-star forces. Yunyenshin was at the front of the third echelon. She was ranked 10th on the cloud roll of Mount Baiyun, so it was normal for her to be in the third echelon. A series of high-pitched howls suddenly rang out and swept over from all directions. The howls were like the roars of the mountain winds in this vast wilderness. As they spread further and further, everyone's expression changed slightly. These were the howls of wolves. They came from the front and the left and right, and they were getting louder and louder. There were very few people in the snow region, but there were some demonic beasts like the snow wolves that lived there. Right in front of them, snow-white dust billowed up like waves, constantly fluctuating and spreading out. Faintly, rumbling sounds could be heard. Shocking murderous intent surged like waves, taking the lead to attack. It was like a piercingly cold wind, sharp as a blade, sweeping past the people in the first echelon, causing their bodies to stiffen slightly. A wave of coldness invaded their bodies, causing them to feel slightly numb. When they first entered the snow region, everyone felt a chill. This kind of chill was enough to freeze an ordinary person to death in a short span of 3 breaths. Even Foundation Realm cultivators wouldn't be able to stay here for more than a few days if they weren't prepared. The deeper they went into the snow region, the colder and more terrifying the chill became. For example, the geniuses were now at least hundreds of thousands of meters deep. The temperature here was so low that even a piece of steel would be frozen into ice in an instant. If a Foundation Realm cultivator came here, they would be turned into an ice sculpture in a few breaths of time, their vitality extinguished. The Transcendent Realm was different. Their life essence had undergone a transformation, becoming more advanced and powerful. Compared to the Foundation Establishment Realm, all aspects of a Transcendent Realm cultivator were significantly improved. Their ability to adapt to and resist the outside world was many times stronger. Coupled with their higher cultivation and strength, whether it was hot or cold, they had a stronger resistance. Even so, everyone felt the chill invading their bodies from all directions. However, they were constantly circulating their strength to resist it, so it couldn't penetrate their bodies. The disciples of Titan's Soul Heavenly Sect had an advantage against this kind of cold because their physiques were very strong and their vitality was shockingly vigorous. Their vigorous vitality contained an astonishing amount of heat, so they could resist this kind of cold without needing to consume any extra strength. Billowing white waves soared into the sky, reaching up to 100 meters. Under the 100-meter white waves there were huge snow-white wolves. Each snow-white wolf was at least 2 meters tall and over 4 meters long. Including their tails, they were nearly 5 meters long. Their snow-white bodies were completely devoid of any impurities, giving them a very pure appearance. If they were completely stripped off their fur, they could definitely be sold for an astonishing price. After all, this kind of fur was very rare and many people liked it. Whether it was made into fur or used as mats on beds or benches, it was an excellent choice. Of course, with everyone's status, they wouldn't hunt the snow wolves here to sell their fur. That would be too cheap, and the price they could sell them for was nothing to them. Snow wolf was a very simple name, but the meaning behind it was not simple at all. Each snow wolf was a transcendent monster beast, and not just any ordinary transcendent. All of them had reached the late stage of the Transcendent Realm, with at least a 7th-layer Transcendent. The pack of snow wolves was densely packed, numbering at least 1,000, each of them exuding an astonishing murderous aura. These were the killers of the snow domain. Even the stronger monster beasts were unwilling to face them head-on. Cruel, ruthless, and proficient in teamwork. In the snow domain, snow wolves were undoubtedly the most terrifying monster beasts. Facing the onslaught of over 1,000 snow wolves, the dozen or so people in the first echelon wore different expressions. Some of their brow furrowed slightly, some of them grinning, some of them filled with fighting spirit, some of them even glared at them with a sharp light, as if they were looking down on everything. But no matter what kind of expression they had, the dozen or so people didn't slow down in the slightest, nor did they show the slightest intention to dodge, simply continuing to rush forward. Snow wolves were indeed the most terrifying killers in the snow domain, but a trivial 1,000 snow wolves weren't enough to force them to retreat. One had to know they were all the strongest disciples of 8 or 9 Star Force's outer sect. Not to mention there were more than a dozen of them. Even if it was just one of them facing 1,000 snow wolves, they still wouldn't hesitate. Of course, if there were more than 10,000 snow wolves, they would have no choice but to fear them. In this snow domain, 1,000 snow wolves could only be regarded as a mid-tier group. Enemies meeting on a narrow path. Kill. The dozen or so people were like a dozen sharp knives that mercilessly stabbed into the pack of snow wolves without any hesitation. A terrifying murderous intent mixed with an astonishing chill assaulted them, as if it wanted to swallow them whole, but it didn't affect them in the slightest. Although this murderous intent was very strong, these dozen or so people were even stronger. The heavy dragon sword shot out from its scabbard, and a pitch-black sword light suddenly pierced through the air, like a black meteor streaking across the sky. It reflected against the snow-white sky of the snow region, and its color became even more distinct. The sword was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Not a single snow wolf could withstand it, whether it was a 7th grade, 8th grade, or 9th grade spirit level wolf. Spirit grade monster beasts corresponded to the human race's transcendent realm, and each grade corresponded to the next. The snow wolves were indeed very strong, but relatively speaking, Chunzong's strength was constantly improving and had already surpassed the limit of an ordinary 9th grade transcendent realm cultivator by many times. 7th, 8th, or 9th grade spirit grade monster beasts made no difference to Chunzong. It was nothing more than the difference between a slightly bigger ant and a slightly smaller ant. The other dozen or so people also took action. Giant Soul Heavenly Sect's disciple simply threw out a punch, sending out a jet black fist energy that was like a dragon soaring out of the abyss, carrying with it a fierce and domineering aura that seemed capable of shattering a mountain. No matter how powerful the snow wolves were, they couldn't compare to a mountain, their bodies like they were made of powder that was barely pieced together. Under this one punch, the terrifying power behind it caused the snow wolves' bodies to explode, their flesh and blood splattering in all directions. With just a single punch, several dozen snow wolves had been killed. Everyone had their own methods, but they only attacked casually. After all, there was no need to use their full strength against these snow wolves. The people of 5 Absolute Heavenly Palace did not even unsheathe their swords. They only slashed with their sword fingers, and an extremely dazzling purple light streaked across. At the same time, it split open the snowy ground, and also split open the bodies of several dozen snow wolves. The Tai Yin Mountain's disciple gently waved his hand, bringing with it an astonishing majestic aura that directly crushed several dozen snow wolves. The profound Heaven Ancient Palace's disciple gently raised his finger, causing a layer of mist to swirl around it, creating an extremely mysterious sight. With a chi sound, several dozen snow wolves were pierced through and their vitality was extinguished. The princess-like disciple of the Huangfu clan shook his right arm, and golden light shot out like a golden spear that pierced through the sky. It was as swift and violent as lightning, and this extremely powerful strike also killed several dozen snow wolves in an instant. Each of the dozen or so people sent out a blow, each blow killing several dozen snow wolves. In the blink of an eye, over 1,000 snow wolves had been killed, leaving only a little over 100. Although the snow wolves were ferocious, tough and cunning, they were still afraid in the face of this kind of killing power. They were intelligent. Over 100 snow wolves let out mournful howls and ran away without looking back. Chapter 1206. As the sword light flashed, the hundreds of snow wolves trembled and were all cut in half, their blood splashing out, dyeing the snow red and filling the air with the smell of blood. The disciples of the 5 Absolute Heavenly Palace all exuded a thick, murderous aura. Sneering coldly, their sharp eyes swept across the hundreds of snow wolf corpses, their cold eyes filled with indifference towards life. At that moment, white waves surged from both sides, even more magnificent and majestic. A pack of snow wolves. Another pack of snow wolves rushed over, this one even larger than the previous one, numbering over 3,000. However, none of them paused for a moment, still maintaining their speed as they rushed forward. Their purpose for coming here was not to kill snow wolves, but to compete for the opportunity to break through to the Saint Realm. The first stage was to reach the end of the snow domain and enter the flying snow-sealed world within the specified time limit. If they exceeded the time limit, they would be disqualified and lose the opportunity to break through to the Saint Realm. Thousands of snow wolves chased after them from both sides, like maggots on bones, catching up to the geniuses of the 4th echelon and pouncing on them without any fear of death. Die! The geniuses of the 4th echelon naturally wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. One by one, they attacked the snow wolves. Even though they were only in the 4th echelon, Each of them had reached the peak of the transcendent realm and were many times stronger than a normal peak transcendent realm cultivator. They were all geniuses among geniuses, possessing extraordinary strength. Blood splattered everywhere, and the broken limbs of the snow wolves flew everywhere. The thick smell of blood permeated the air, causing the snow wolves to go even crazier. One by one, they howled and their eyes turned scarlet. Their bodies faintly swelled, as if they had gone berserk. An extremely terrifying murderous aura lingered around their bodies, making them even more terrifying. Facing snow wolves, these monster beasts from the snow domain, one could either kill them with the most tyrannical method possible, forcing them to flee in fear, or provoke them into going berserk. In their berserk state, not only did the snow wolves' eyes turn scarlet red, but their bodies also seemed to glow with a faint red light, causing their strength to soar by 30%. 30%. This was a terrifying increase. However, these 100 or so geniuses from 7-star and 8-star forces were also very strong, and under their full strength, they were able to slaughter the snow wolves. Kill, kill, kill. The geniuses of the 4th echelon fought with the thousands of berserk snow wolves, but the others simply ignored them, because stopping to fight with the snow wolves would undoubtedly delay their progress. This matter concerned his future, and he didn't have anyone he cared about. Naturally, he wouldn't sacrifice himself for this. After a fierce battle, all 6,000 snow wolves died, but none of the geniuses died. At most, they suffered light injuries, but these light injuries were quickly healed with the help of pills. Thousands of snow wolves were killed, their corpses littered the ground. Large amounts of blood dyed several thousand meters of the snowy ground red, and an extremely thick smell of blood permeated the air, lingering for a long time. The snow wolf's sense of smell was extremely amazing. It was 1,000,000 times better than a normal person's. Even a half-saint expert's sense of smell couldn't be compared to a 7th-grade spirit-level snow wolf. Immediately, a large number of snow wolves smelled the blood, and they could tell that it was the blood of a snow wolf. A large number of snow wolves were slaughtered. An earth-shattering howl rang out, as if an astonishing tsunami was coming from the front. It was like a thunderous explosion, causing the snow on the snowy mountains to scatter, turning into snowballs that rolled down to the bottom of the mountains. In the next moment, a series of resounding howls filled with killing intent rang out from all directions. Those were the howls of the snow wolves, as if they were responding to each other. Such dense and resounding howls were more than 10 times stronger than before, indicating that the number of snow wolves was much greater than before, causing everyone's expression to become even more unsightly. Demonic beasts like the snow wolves weren't a threat to everyone when there were only a few hundred of them. If there were thousands of them, the threat wouldn't be great, but it would delay some time. However, if there were tens of thousands of them, it wouldn't be as simple as delaying time, it would even bring about a threat to everyone's lives. There was a snowy mountain in front of them. It wasn't very high, about 1,000 meters tall. Just below the snowy mountain, there was a huge boulder that was dozens of meters tall, covered in a thick layer of snow. On the huge boulder covered in snow, there was a figure standing upright. The figure was 5 meters tall and more than 10 meters long. Its entire body was snowy white, and the white fur on its body was extremely pure, so pure that it emitted a white halo. This was a huge wolf, a huge snow wolf that was several times larger than the other snow wolves. This snow wolf's appearance was incomparably ferocious. It was extremely strong and domineering, as if it was a majestic king, unexcelled in the world. There seemed to be a tuft of white hair on its forehead that exuded an even richer brilliance, like a burning white flame. A pair of flawless ruby-like eyes seemed to overlook the world, indifferent and aloof. Everyone's expression changed slightly as they stared at this figure. Wolf King. Snow Wolf King. Only the Snow Wolf King had such a physique and such power. The Snow Wolf King's aura was tyrannical and unfathomable, causing everyone to tremble slightly. Below the boulder under the Snow Wolf King's paw, there were 10 4-meter-tall giant snow wolves. These 10 seemingly powerful giant snow wolves all exuded an astonishing aura, one that had reached the peak of the transcendent realm. Snow Wolf Guards. Every Wolf King would have a wolf guard under him, and every wolf guard was selected after many battles. They were the most powerful demonic beasts in the entire clan, second only to the Wolf King. 10 Snow Wolf Guards and a Snow Wolf King blocking the way caused the faces of the first echelon to turn solemn. In their perception, the 10 Snow Wolf Guards were very powerful. Chen Zong estimated that they were not much inferior to Gao Hongjing from half a year ago, perhaps even comparable. If the Snow Wolf Guards were so powerful, then what about the Snow Wolf King? It was hard to imagine. At this moment, a dense sound rang out, like an army of thousands of horses galloping, their aura soaring to the sky. In all directions, one snow wolf after another appeared, so densely packed that there seemed to be no end to them. An astonishing evil chi mixed with the terrifying chill of the snow domain spread out in all directions, filling the sky with heavy snow. The wind blew, and the heavy snow swept in all directions. The dozen people in the first echelon all stopped, because around the 10 Snow Wolf Guards, one after another tyrannical snow wolf appeared. Each snow wolf was 3 meters tall and exuded an astonishing aura. If the 10 Snow Wolf Guards had the strength of an 8-star force's third-seat disciple, then those 3-meter-tall snow wolves had the strength of an 8-star force's top 10 outer sect disciple. No matter if it was the 10th or 4th place, they all belonged to the top 10. There were more than 1,000 of these snow wolves. It could be said that the death of thousands of snow wolves had angered the Snow Wolf clan in the snow domain. Under the command of the Snow Wolf King, almost all of them were mobilized to hunt down this group of murderers who dared to kill thousands of their own clan members. Tens of thousands! In all directions, tens of thousands of snow wolves formed an encirclement, surrounding more than 300 disciples in the middle. An astonishing evil chi mixed with chilling evil chi was emitted from every snow wolf, and they all rushed towards the 300 people who were surrounded. The evil chi of tens of thousands of snow wolves combined with the chilling evil chi was extremely terrifying. One could vaguely see a 1,000-meter-tall snow wolf's shadow condensing in the sky, looking down. Its pair of scarlet eyes were cold and emotionless, and the shocking evil chi made everyone's heart sink. Kill! The 5 Extinction Heavenly Palace's head disciple's face was filled with murderous intent, and his eyes were indifferent as he spat out a word. Kill our way out! Fight! Just a bunch of wolf cubs and you want to block my way? All of you die. In an instant, more than 10 geniuses from the first echelon exploded and charged forward. There were only 3 days left, and it was extremely urgent. They had to race against time, and there could not be any unnecessary delays. No matter how strong the Snow Wolf Guards were, no matter how strong the Snow Wolf King was, they had to kill their way out and charge towards the end of the snow region. More than 10 geniuses from the first echelon exploded, and the second, third, and fourth echelon geniuses also exploded. This time, they did not hold back. At the same time, the Snow Wolf King, who was on top of a huge rock, raised its claw and slammed it down. Its huge and mighty body crouched down, and it opened its huge mouth that was filled with sharp teeth and roared at the 300 people below. This low and deep roar was the signal to attack. Tens of thousands of snow wolves immediately exploded with all their strength, and they all charged forward. Thousands of elite snow wolves also launched a frontal attack, and the 10 powerful Snow Wolf Guards also launched an attack. Suddenly, a cracking sound rang out, and the Snow Wolf King raised its second claw and slammed it down. An extremely terrifying force burst out from the claw, and a shocking shock wave rippled out from the point of impact, causing a shocking wave to surge out. Cracks appeared on the huge rock, and they were densely packed like lightning. The Snow Wolf King's body suddenly rushed forward, and it turned into a snow-white lightning that tore through the sky. Fast! It was indescribably fast. Not only was it fast, but it also burst out with an extremely terrifying aura that tore through the sky. The sudden attack of the wolf claw shattered the vacuum, and an earth-shattering force mixed with extreme killing intent and chilling intent swept out, shocking the heavens and earth. The chilling air in the snow region surged along with the Snow Wolf King, and the snowflakes that filled the sky formed a shocking gale that blew over, as if a mighty snowstorm was brewing. The Snow Wolf King did not move, but once it moved, it locked onto one of the geniuses from the first echelon. It was the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect's chief outer disciple, a 2-meter-tall physique cultivator in bronze armor. Good timing. The chief outer disciple of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect, Tuoba Nu, roared. His body suddenly trembled, and a terrifying aura burst out like a volcanic eruption. His shocking blood energy surged like thunder, and a high-pitched dragon roar seemed to resound in all directions, causing a torrential ripple. His eyes were filled with anger, and his arms were stretched forward. A terrifying energy surged into his arms, causing them to swell up in an instant. The web between his thumb and forefinger trembled, and his 5 fingers spread out, as if they were pillars that stretched across the heavens and earth. Chen Zong also noticed this scene, and he split his attention to observe. After all, Chen Zong was also a physique cultivator, and he was very curious about the physique cultivator of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect. Especially since he was the chief outer disciple of the Titan Soul Heavenly Sect, he should be able to fully display the essence of the physique cultivator. Chapter 1207. With a loud boom, the momentum shook the area. Tuoba Nu grasped the Snow Wolf King's claws tightly. His strength exploded. His muscles swelled and his body seemed to have swelled up. With a roar, he shook his arms and burst out a stormy wave of strength. He was about to swing the Snow Wolf King's body and smash it on the snow. However, the Snow Wolf King was stronger than expected. Its huge body gave it even more strength. Tuoba Nu didn't even shake it as it fell. Instead, it shook its claws and a terrifying force erupted like a volcano. Not only did it shake off Tuoba Nu's fingers, but it was also like a huge spear that pierced through the air. Tuoba Nu was shocked. He quickly crossed his arms and his muscles bulged like a shield in front of him to block the Snow Wolf King's attack. With a loud bang, the Snow Wolf King's claws released a terrifying force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Tuoba Nu's expression changed drastically. His strong body trembled, and he retreated rapidly as if he was skiing. His feet left 2 deep trenches in the snow. The powerful force made Tuoba Nu's arms tremble. A terrifying and domineering chill spread from his arms to his body, as if it was going to freeze and destroy his body. Strong. The Snow Wolf King's strength was very strong. Judging from this attack, it wasn't at the half-step saint level. However, it was infinitely close to it. Even if it encountered a true half-step saint expert, the Snow Wolf King would still have the strength to fight back. The 10 Snow Wolf guards charged forward and released a powerful force. After the Snow Wolf King forced Tuoba Nu to retreat, it turned around and waved its claws to tear the sky. The white light of the claws created a series of sparks as it rubbed against the air. The smell of burnt flesh permeated the air, and it was very pungent. The claws were aimed at the outer sect chief disciples of the Dark Hall of Sun and Moon and the outer sect chief disciples of the Absolute Refining Sect. Their expressions changed, and they immediately used their own methods to defend and dodge. The Titan Soul Sect's Tuoba Nu's body was extremely strong. Even he couldn't defend against the Snow Wolf King's attack. Their defense couldn't be compared to Tuoba Nu's. Of course, this didn't mean that they were weaker than Tuoba Nu. They each had their own strength. When the Snow Wolf King waved its claws, its long and thick tail also shook violently and swung out. The shocking momentum exploded in the void. It could shatter a mountain in one hit. It fiercely attacked the outer sect chief disciple of the Big Dipper Overlord sect. The Heavenly Dipper Overlord sect's outer sect chief disciple's expression turned ruthless. The giant cudgel in his hands suddenly shook, and the cudgel's body was like a giant python that flipped over, emitting an extremely shocking power. It bounced up and seemed to shatter the void, striking down fiercely. With this strike, the shadow of the staff covered the sky and covered the sun. The pressure of the staff shocked the world and shattered the snow on the ground. Boom! The giant cudgel struck down and collided with the Snow Wolf King's tail, causing a monstrous storm to erupt in all directions. The outer sect chief disciple of the Big Dipper Tyrant sect had a drastic change in expression. The giant cudgel was bounced up high by a tyrannical force, causing him to stagger backward. His arms were in intense pain, as if his bones were about to break. Strong. The Snow Wolf's strength too. And yet, it hadn't reached the true half-step saint realm. It could only be regarded as a half-step saint. These dozen people had reached the true limit of the transcendent realm. They were all very strong, but there were still some differences in strength depending on the individual. The Snow Wolf King was also at the limit of the spirit grade. It was equivalent to the true limit of the transcendent realm. However, the Snow Wolf King was a monster beast. It was born with a strong physique and vigorous vitality. In this regard, it was superior to many cultivators. Moreover, the Snow Wolf King was the king of the Snow Wolf clan. Its physique was more than 10 times stronger than an ordinary snow wolf. Although the 10 Snow Wolf guards weren't as strong as the Snow Wolf King, they were still very strong and wouldn't be easy to deal with. The Snow Wolf King and the 10 Snow Wolf guards cooperated with each other and blocked the path of the first echelon geniuses. The other Snow Wolves attacked the second, third, and even fourth echelon geniuses one after another. Tens of thousands of Snow Wolves besieged them. The murderous aura was extremely shocking. The group of experts in the sky watched, but they had no intention of lending a helping hand. If they had to help in such a situation, then even if they obtained an opportunity to enter the Saint Realm and broke through to the Saint Realm, they wouldn't have any great achievement. True masters had always been born from countless life and death situations. If they didn't experience slaughter, setbacks, and tribulations, they wouldn't be able to shine. The Snow Wolf King directly stalled 4 of the first echelon geniuses, making it so that they could barely contend with it. The Snow Wolf King's strength was indeed terrifying. The strength of each Snow Wolf guard was even stronger than expected. In a one-on-one fight, it was impossible to kill them in a short time. For example, Chernzong was now facing a Snow Wolf guard. The Snow Wolf guard's strength was about the same as Gao Hongjing's half a year ago, but Gao Hongjing wouldn't have been its opponent half a year ago. This was because the Snow Wolf guard's physique was very strong. Their tyrannical physique gave them amazing defensive capabilities and endurance. A melee. Chaos. Tens of thousands of snow wolves attacked crazily. More than 300 geniuses from various sect forces also took action to resist. This kind of battle was not a drill, but a real life and death battle. If one wasn't careful enough and wasn't strong enough, he would die here. His body would be torn to pieces by the snow wolves, and he would even become their food. A few snow wolves suddenly flew over from the side, their terrifying sharp claws flickering with cold light in the void. They attacked with extreme killing intent and coldness. Chernzong seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He clearly saw the sudden attack of the snow wolf. With a shake of the heavy dragon sword, he repelled the snow wolf guards. The sword light rolled up and slashed through the snow wolves like a hot knife through butter. The snow wolves that were attacking from behind were suddenly swept by the sword light. Their bodies paused for a moment, and then they fell to the ground in two, dyeing the snow red with blood. The snow wolf guards furiously pounced. Their sharp claws tore through the air, bursting with countless sparks. Their sharp fangs were extremely sharp, and they bit fiercely, trying to tear Chernzong to pieces. However, the pitch-black sword light flashed and tore through the sky again. The sword light seemed to be floating, but the moment it touched the snow wolf guards, it burst out with an astonishing violent power. It was incomparably overbearing. With a boom, the astonishing strength spread out in all directions like wild waves, rolling up thousands of layers of snow and exploding. Heartless sword. Chunzong launched the second sword attack. The sword light seemed to shuttle through the air without leaving a trace. The moment the snow wolf guards were about to attack again, they seemed to be facing the heavy dragon sword with their own chest. The heavy dragon sword was not only 98,000 kilograms heavy, but also extremely sharp. In an instant, it pierced through the snow wolf guard's strong body and went straight through them like a hot knife through butter. Kill. Just now, Chunzong did not use his full strength. Now, he used all his strength. Although the snow wolf guards were strong, they still could not resist. After killing the snow wolf guards with one sword attack, Chunzong's soul sense, which covered the whole area, also sensed the situation of the other disciples of Mount Baiyun. Senior sister Yunyanxin was surrounded by more than a dozen powerful snow wolves. However, with Yunyanxin's strength, she could completely resist and kill them. However, there was a 3-meter-tall snow wolf quietly lurking. It hid its breath and slowly approached Yunyanxin like a hunter staring at its prey. It had reached the optimal distance and was only waiting for the right time to launch a sudden attack. In an instant, the 3-meter-tall snow wolf burst out with power. Its body tore through the sky like a snow-white lightning bolt. Its sharp claws brought up a series of dazzling sparks, and a burning aura spread in all directions. This attack was extremely fast and powerful. It was completely out of Yunyanxin's expectations. By the time Yunyanxin was alerted, the surrounding snow wolves had already gone berserk. They charged at Yunyanxin without regard for anything else. Even if they had to sacrifice themselves, they still wanted to kill Yunyanxin. After half a year of cultivation, Yunyanxin's strength had also improved greatly. She was not flustered in the face of danger, and her sword was like the wind. Dozens of sword lights bloomed at the same time, piercing through dozens of snow wolves that had gone berserk. Soon after, the dozens of sword shadows gathered into one and slashed horizontally towards the 3-meter-tall snow wolf. With one slash, the snow wolf was killed. Using his soul sense, Chunzong could not help but exclaim in surprise. Compared to half a year ago, senior sister Yunyanxin's strength had indeed improved significantly. If it was half a year ago, she would at most be able to kill those snow wolves. She would not be able to do anything to the 3-meter-tall snow wolf. With a shake of the heavy dragon sword, several pitch-black sword lights suddenly pierced through the air and immediately pierced through the snow wolves surrounding the White Cloud Mountain disciples, relieving the pressure on everyone in an instant. "Let's go." Chunzong's voice sounded in everyone's ears at the same time. Opportunities should be fought for by oneself. They could not modestly give it to others. This was their principle. However, as fellow disciples of the same sect, it was also their principle to not interfere in times of danger and lend a helping hand. To Chunzong, that sword light was nothing at all. It didn't consume much of his strength, nor did it take up much of his time. However, to everyone else, it instantly alleviated the pressure on them and won them a trace of opportunity to escape. None of them could be compared to ordinary people. When the pitch-black sword light killed the snow wolves around them and Chunzong's voice sounded in their ears, they had already reacted. One after another, they burst out with astonishing speed and fled. The purpose of coming here was not to fight with the demonic beasts, but to reach the end of the snow domain. It was best to buy time. After all, they would be attacked by the snow wolves here. No one knew what would happen next. The people of White Cloud Mountain did this, and so did the people of the other sect forces. Go, go, go! In an instant, some people rushed out of the encirclement of the snow wolves. However, the snow wolves would not let them go so easily. They chased after them madly. The ground shook incessantly. Suddenly, a beam of snow-white light as thick as a muscular man's waist shot out from the Snow Wolf King's mouth. This beam of light was extremely fast. In an instant it traversed across the sky. Its terrifying power evaporated the air and turned it into a vacuum. Under this attack, the dozen or so geniuses had no time to dodge. They could only use all their strength to resist. However, the power of this attack was too terrifying and too powerful. The dozen or so geniuses could not resist at all. They were torn apart in an instant. A few of the dozen or so geniuses had their bodies directly penetrated and exploded. Although the other 10 or so geniuses did not die, they were thrown far away and vomited blood. They were severely injured. Death. This was the first time death had occurred. The ones who died were geniuses among geniuses. The remaining power of the snow-white light did not dissipate. It blasted towards the snow mountain. Chapter 1208. Rumble. The 1,000-meter-tall snow mountain suddenly trembled. The accumulated snow, which had been accumulating for an unknown number of years, crumbled and collapsed, turning into pieces of broken snow mountain streams that rolled down like a tsunami, mighty and ferocious. Avalanche. This was the most common disaster in Snow Mountain. The avalanche that came down from the 1,000-meter-tall snow mountain was only loud in the beginning, but it was not that powerful. However, as it continued to fall, its power became stronger and stronger. The momentum was shocking, and the power became more and more terrifying, as if it was going to shatter everything. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Even geniuses like Chen Zong were shocked when facing such an avalanche. They might be able to resist it with all their strength, but it would definitely be uncomfortable. If they were hit by the avalanche, they would be delayed for a long time. The avalanche's frontal attack, the encirclement of tens of thousands of snow wolves, and the all-out attack of the powerful Snow Wolf King. These three factors caused a lot of trouble for everyone. Kill the Snow Wolf King first. Everyone immediately reacted. If the Snow Wolf King did not die, it would be even more troublesome. Only by killing it first would they be able to avoid future troubles. Everyone realized this a little late, but it was not too late. Kill. In an instant, more than 10 geniuses from the first echelon attacked the Snow Wolf King. The Snow Wolf King's strength was indeed very powerful and shocking. Facing the attacks of more than 10 geniuses, it was able to resist their attacks and counterattack. The sword cultivator from the 5 Absolute Heavenly Palace had a serious expression, and his eyes emitted an extremely sharp killing intent. With a shake of his sword, an extremely dazzling purple light shot out, and a 3-foot-long sword light pierced through the sky. It was silent, but it carried an extreme killing intent and a sharpness that could pierce through everything. That dazzling purple sword light seemed to have merged with tens of thousands of sword chi. It was extremely terrifying. This was a killing move. The chief disciple of the Taiyan Mountain's outer sect waved his hands and flicked his 10 fingers. Strands of gray aura filled the air, condensing and weaving. Then, an illusion of a mountain appeared out of thin air. As the aura continued to pour in, the illusion of the mountain became more and more solid. In a flash, less than 1/10 of a breath's time had passed from the Taiyan Mountain disciple's hand seal to the illusion of the mountain. Boom! The mountain seal smashed towards the Snow Wolf King. The mountain seal seemed to contain the vigorous power of an ancient mountain. It was incomparably heavy, and when it smashed out, the surrounding space was compressed to the extreme. It was as tough as refined steel. The 5 fingers of the disciple from the mysterious Heaven Ancient Palace shook like the wings of a bird. They were filled with incomparable mysteries. Shortly after, a sharp and clear cry resounded in the sky and spread in all directions. The power of the 5 fingers condensed and shot out in an instant. It was like a finger light, but also like the shadow of a black bird. It was full of indescribable mystery. As soon as the finger beam or the mystic bird's shadow left the finger, it silently shuttled through the spatial rifts and charged towards the Snow Wolf King. The Snow Wolf King was immediately threatened by the 3 outer sect first disciples of the 3 great 9-star sections. That was not all. The outer sect chief disciple of the Big Dipper Overlord sect raised his cudgel, and a shocking amount of earth energy flowed into the cudgel. Every strand of earth energy was more condensed than refined gold, and it was as heavy as a mountain. A single strike from the cudgel seemed to be able to shatter a mountain and crack the earth. The cudgel was extremely domineering and unyielding. It was filled with a shocking battle intent as it fiercely blasted towards the Snow Wolf King. The 7 Flames Glazed Palace's first disciple of the 7 Flames Glazed Palace opened his hands, and a shocking silver flame suddenly burned on his hands. Within the silver flame, there were traces of red threads swimming around like dragons and snakes. The silver and red flames rose up like a hidden dragon emerging from the abyss. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws to control the 9 heavens. They emitted a terrifying mystery and scorching heat that could burn all things in the world as they blasted towards the Snow Wolf King. Wherever the blazing flames passed, the snow melted in an instant. Each of them brought out their true strength, hoping to kill the Snow Wolf King in one blow. Chenzong's sword pierced through the air. The heavy dragon sword was as light as a feather, but it contained an incomparably terrifying power. This sword was incomparably mysterious and difficult to track, as if it was aimed at the heart. Heartless sword. The Snow Wolf King's strength was indeed very tyrannical. He could withstand the attacks of several first-tier geniuses by himself, and even gain the upper hand. But now, he was not facing a few, but more than 10. More than 10 peerless geniuses were attacking him with their true strength. He could block 1 attack, 2 attacks, 3 attacks, but he couldn't block more than that. Under the joint attack of more than 10 peerless geniuses, the tyrannical Snow Wolf King was instantly hit. He was unable to withstand such a powerful attack, and his body, which was even more tyrannical than the Titan Soul Heavenly Sex Tuoba knew, was instantly shattered. He was thrown into the pack of snow wolves like a ragged sack. Fresh blood flowed out and his body was broken. The Snow Wolf King's tenacious vitality struggled to get up again. However, his injuries were too severe, and he could only cry out in grief. The injuries were too severe, and his vitality was quickly draining away. In just a few breaths, the Snow Wolf King's head tilted to one side, and his vitality was completely gone. He was completely dead. With the death of the Snow Wolf King, the other snow wolves were stunned, and they quickly fled. The pack of snow wolves was under the control and command of the Snow Wolf King. With the death of the Snow Wolf King, they lost their leader and became scattered. Next, a new leader would emerge from the slaughter to lead the pack again. However, this had nothing to do with Chenzong and the rest. The attack just now was too powerful, and it caused the avalanche to intensify. The momentum made everyone's expression more serious. Landslide and earth splitting. There was no one who did not fear this kind of power. The experts above all smiled. Facing such a disaster, how would they deal with it? Gather all our strength and kill our way out, the chief outer sect disciple of Tai Yen Mountain roared. This was undoubtedly the best way. 5 Ju Heavenly Palace, follow me. The chief outer sect disciple of 5 Ju Heavenly Palace did not care. With a command, his long sword pierced through the air like a sharp awl. Originally, with the combined strength of more than 300 people, they could completely resist and even break through the avalanche that was getting stronger and stronger. Unfortunately, the chief outer sect disciple of 5 Ju Heavenly Palace was too arrogant. Joining forces to kill the Snow Wolf King was already the biggest compromise he could make. Since the people of 5 Ju Heavenly Palace were unwilling to join forces, the people of Big Dipper Overlord sect also directly attacked. For a moment, everyone was fighting for themselves. White Cloud Mountain was naturally led by Chen Zong. Kill. The heavy dragon sword burst forth with a terrifying power, directly shattering the front and destroying a large part of the avalanche. However, at the same time, the terrifying power bombarded Chen Zong, causing him to bear a great impact. The other 9 disciples of White Cloud Mountain also attacked one after another to destroy the avalanche. They were also shocked by the power of the avalanche. The power of the avalanche was too strong. It was even more terrifying than the Snow Wolf King's attack. Moreover, it was continuous and extremely shocking. Even so, Chen Zong and the rest still relied on their own strength to break through the avalanche's impact and quickly rush to the side. When facing an avalanche, it was best not to retreat. The more one retreated, the stronger the avalanche's power and the harder it would be to resist. Charge, 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 charge. This avalanche was extremely powerful, and it caused the snow in the surroundings to roll, covering a radius of tens of thousands of meters. The waves continued to spread out. 100,000 meters. 110,000 meters. 120,000 meters. The range of the avalanche's impact became wider and wider, and its power also became more and more terrifying. The surroundings were filled with white snow, and it was difficult to see more than a few meters away. The astonishing chill had reached a point where it was enough to freeze an early Transcendent Realm cultivator, and it was still intensifying. As the chill grew deeper and deeper, it mixed with the flying snow and the avalanche's torrent, affecting everyone's speed. The repeated impacts forced everyone to use all their strength to resist. It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. The astonishing momentum surged for hundreds of thousands of meters. It was extremely terrifying, and the earth trembled incessantly. Drowned. More than 300 people were completely submerged. The astonishing shaking lasted for nearly half an hour before it stopped. The 1,000-meter-tall snow mountain had completely collapsed. Because it was not a real mountain, it was formed by the accumulation of snow over many years. When it collapsed, it naturally collapsed. Within a radius of hundreds of thousands of meters, the snow was scattered everywhere, as if it had been trampled by a void behemoth. More than 300 people had disappeared without a trace, as if they had all been crushed by the terrifying avalanche. The masters above all stared. Under their eyes, it was as if nothing could hide, and they could see everything clearly. About half an hour passed. With a bang, a snowflake exploded, and a strong and imposing figure rushed out. It was Giant Soul Heavenly Sex Tuoba Nu. Tuoba Nu's physique was extremely astonishing, and his vitality was extremely tyrannical. In such a situation, it was undoubtedly more advantageous for him. Then, another person broke out of the snow. It was Chen Zong. Tuoba Nu was stunned. He stared at Chen Zong as if he wanted to see through him. Body refinement cultivators had a stronger ability to adapt to various environments, and their survivability was also stronger. Therefore, in such a disaster, body refinement cultivators had a higher chance of survival, and the speed at which they broke out of the snow would also be faster. Tuoba Nu thought that the second person to break out of the snow would be Giant Soul Heavenly Sect's second disciple, but he did not expect it to be someone from another sect. It seemed to be a disciple of White Cloud Mountain. Could it be that this person also cultivated body refinement? Thinking of this, Tuoba Nu suddenly had a strong fighting spirit. Tuoba Nu's guess was right. Chen Zong was able to break out of the snow so quickly because of his body refinement cultivation. Of course, in terms of body refinement cultivation, Chen Zong was not comparable to any of the 10 disciples of Giant Soul Heavenly Sect. However, Chen Zong was not a body refinement cultivator. He had a stronger chi refinement cultivation and the powerful purple cloud black star flame. Therefore, he broke out of the snow slightly slower than Tuoba Nu. More people broke out of the snow. Not long after, the first group of Heaven's Prides appeared one after another. Chernzong scanned with his spiritual consciousness, looking for White Cloud Mountain's disciples. After unsheathing his sword and helping White Cloud Mountain's disciples break out of the snow, he immediately set off towards the end of the snow region. It was a race against time. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Figures shot out like arrows from a bow. Their speed was incomparably fast, and they streaked across the snowy ground, leaving behind trails. Not long after, more than 300 people separated once again, clearly separating into different groups. The first group of people was still at the forefront. The second group was a few thousand meters away, the third group was a few thousand meters away, and the fourth group was still a few thousand meters away. Chapter 1209. The snow region was vast and boundless, and the deeper one went, the thicker the snow became. A figure flew out of the thick pure white snow. With a light tap of his toes, he flew thousands of meters away in an instant, leaving no trace in the snow. The figure was swift and silent, as if it didn't cause any sound of breaking wind. It was very agile, like the clouds in the sky changing constantly. Chernzong was flying quickly to the extreme north of the snow region, and there was no one else beside him. First, he was surrounded by a pack of snow wolves, and then the snow mountain collapsed during the fierce battle, causing a big avalanche. Then, when he continued to move forward, he encountered an ice storm. The ice storm was more than 10 times stronger than the previous avalanche, and it was more dangerous. It affected a wider area and lasted longer, and it directly scattered more than 300 people. After the ice storm passed, there was no one else around Chernzong, and he didn't know where he had been swept to. Even a half-saint expert had to pay attention to such a strong ice storm. Although the ice storm had shifted his original trajectory, Chernzong found the direction and continued to move north after identifying the direction. When a person used his body movement to fly over the vast snow region at lightning speed without seeing other creatures, he would inevitably feel lonely after a long time, as if he was the only one left in the whole world. Loneliness had always been the natural enemy of human beings. Especially in this kind of pure white snowy region that stretched as far as the eye could see, it was empty, silent, and cold. The feeling of being unable to see a trace of the sky and land would imperceptibly intensify the feeling of loneliness, and it would directly attack the heart and mind. Chernzong had a strong mind and a firm will. Even if he was running alone in the endless snow region, he wouldn't feel lost. That was because his mind was firm and he had a goal. With a goal, there would be motivation. With a firm character, he would not be afraid of difficulties and obstacles, and he would move forward courageously. Here, Chernzong couldn't feel the passage of time. Unknowingly, night fell. Under the night sky, the snow region seemed to be quieter and emptier. The stars dotted the boundless night sky, and they were so clear and lively as if one could reach out and touch them. The night sky in this region was truly vast. No, it should be said that the starry sky was vast. Under the night sky, the snow region was even quieter than usual, but the chill was even deeper. Fortunately, Chernzong's cultivation was not low, and he had a strong and vigorous qi and blood in his body, so he was able to resist the shocking chill. If those geniuses in the fourth echelon had not refined their bodies, they would have to expend more energy to resist the chill. Even though it was late at night, Chernzong didn't intend to stop. He didn't need to rest. He wanted to reach his destination as soon as possible. Charge! Suddenly, a hissing sound was heard. It was so subtle that Chernzong wouldn't have noticed it if his 5 senses weren't so sharp. With a sweep of his soul sense, Chernzong saw a figure swimming under the snow thousands of meters away. It was a snow python. The snow pythons in the snow region were rather peculiar. They liked to move around at night to hunt for prey. Chernzong was the prey it had set its eyes on. As Chernzong approached, the snow python suddenly burst out from the snowy ground. It was even thicker than a strong man's body, and it burst out with an astonishing ferocious aura. It opened its bloody mouth, and a fishy smell blew out like a gale. Its shadow shrouded Chunzong's body. This was a 9th grade spirit grade snow python. If an ordinary peak transcendent realm cultivator was caught off guard, they would be swallowed whole. However, Chunzong's expression didn't change in the slightest, as if everything was under his control. Unsheathing the heavy dragon sword, a jet-black sword light shot out like an aurora, like a meteor streaking across the night sky. The snow python with its maw wide open suddenly froze, its body stiffening as it slammed into the ground, sending waves of snow tumbling out. Even if this snow python was several times stronger, it wouldn't be able to block Chunzong's sword. After killing the snow python, Chunzong quickly left. Because the snow python's blood had flowed out, the smell of blood was very strong. Soon, the other demonic beasts of the snow region would smell it and rush over. If they found Chunzong, they would definitely attack him. In such a place, fighting monster beasts wasn't a wise choice. If possible, it was best to avoid it. Under the curtain of night, Chunzong hurried along at full speed, killing some of the snow domain monster beasts that appeared at night. As the sky gradually brightened, Chunzong saw a series of ice mountains in front of him. The deeper he went into the snow domain, the colder it became. The snow-capped mountains gradually turned into icebergs. Each iceberg was covered in snow, and as time passed, it gradually condensed into solid ice. The icebergs were like ice giants standing on top of the snowy region, towering into the sky. They were so majestic that it was astonishing. At that moment, a figure flickering with golden flames streaked across the sky at an astonishing speed, flying in the same direction as Chunzong. Chunzong saw the other party, and the other party also saw Chunzong. It was the chief disciple of the Huangfu clan, the woman who looked like a princess, Huangfu Feihuang. Huangfu Feihuang was slightly surprised to see Chunzong, but she didn't pay attention to him. In theory, the two of them were competitors. The golden flames around Huangfu Feihuang continued to spurt out, circling around her like streams of water. She continued to move forward at an extremely fast speed. Chunzong wasn't slow either. The two of them were thousands of meters apart like two parallel lines. They both displayed their speed, and kept moving toward the extreme north of the snow domain. Huangfu Feihuang had always been competitive, and her talent was the highest in the Huangfu clan in 100 years. She wanted to leave Chunzong behind. However, Chunzong's speed wasn't slow at all. They were actually moving side by side. Huangfu Feihuang's competitive spirit seemed to be stimulated. She shook her shoulders, and the golden flames around her body fluctuated in an instant. They quickly spread and condensed behind her shoulders, turning into two light wings that fluttered like ribbons. Huangfu Feihuang's body suddenly rushed forward at an extremely fast speed, but it didn't seem abrupt at all. Instead, it had an indescribable agility, like a phoenix soaring in the sky. In just an instant, Huangfu Feihuang's speed increased by 30%, directly breaking the momentum of moving side by side with Chunzong. She was about to leave Chunzong far behind. In a moment of excitement, Chunzong's muscles and bones trembled slightly. There seemed to be a dull sound, and a terrifying invisible force fluctuated in all directions, bursting out layers of ripples. The snow under his feet instantly exploded, and snow waves more than 10 meters high rushed up. A tyrannical force recoiled, causing Chunzong's speed to increase. In an instant, he crossed several thousand meters and was once again on par with Huangfu Feihuang. Huangfu Feihuang was secretly shocked, but she mustered all her strength and swore to leave Chunzong behind. As the most outstanding disciple of the Huangfu clan in 100 years, she was like a princess. Her bloodline was pure and noble, and she was born extraordinary. She had long nurtured the idea of being superior. How could a cultivator without a bloodline compare to someone with a noble bloodline like her? Even if the other party was the chief disciple of the White Cloud Mountains outer sect, it still wouldn't be enough. To a bloodline cultivator, they valued the level of life more. They believed that a bloodline cultivator's life essence was higher, and they were born to be superior to others. As someone with an extremely pure bloodline in the Huangfu clan, Huangfu Feihuang valued her bloodline even more. Now, a non-bloodline cultivator was actually on par with her in terms of speed. She couldn't accept this. More streamers of golden flames condensed, and the light wings became more and more solid. Huangfu Feihuang's speed increased again. Chen Zong stepped on the snowy ground step by step. Every step he took burst forth with astonishing power, splashing thousands of layers of snow. The tyrannical force caused Chen Zong's speed to increase. Every time he moved, it was like an aurora piercing through the sky. He wasn't inferior to Huangfu Feihuang in the slightest. The two were separated by several thousand meters, and their speed was getting faster and faster. In the end, the light wings behind Huangfu Feihuang were vivid and lifelike, just like the wings of a heavenly phoenix. With a flap, Huangfu Feihuang's speed doubled. On the other hand, Chen Zong also used his body refining ability to double his speed. After a period of time, the two still couldn't distinguish who was faster and who was slower. When one overtook the other would instantly catch up, overtake the other, and then be overtaken again. In this situation where they were constantly overtaking each other, the two figures flew into the depths of the snowy region. Roar! An earth-shattering and violent sound suddenly rang out. It was like the rolling thunder that split the sky and earth. The astonishing momentum was vast and mighty. The icebergs trembled slightly under this roar, and some of the snow covering the icebergs rustled and fell. A crack even appeared on the icebergs closer to the roar. Chen Zong and Huangfu Feihuang's expressions changed slightly. From the roar, the two of them could hear the threat. A very powerful demon beast of the snowy region. A demon beast of the snowy region that was even more powerful than the Snow Wolf King from before. A snow-white figure quickly enlarged in the eyes of the two. When they saw the figure, their pupils shrank. It was a snow ape. This was a snow ape with a height of 10 meters. Its entire body was snow-white, and its huge and imposing body had bulging muscles. It was as if it had been compressed from 10,000 years of ice. It contained an extremely terrifying power. If it were to explode, it would be enough to destroy a mountain. To be honest, a 10-meter-tall snow ape wasn't very big. Chen Zong had seen monster beasts that were 100 meters tall. In terms of size, this snow ape really didn't have any advantage. However, the aura that this snow ape exuded was very tyrannical. It directly surpassed the level of the transcendent realm and reached the half-step saint realm. This was a monster beast that had the strength of a half-step saint. The strength of a half-step saint and the body of a monster beast was much stronger and more terrifying than an ordinary half-step saint. This half-step saint snow ape had already sensed the aura of Chen Zong and Huangfu Feihuang. Its pair of ruby-like eyes swept over the two of them, faintly excited. From the male human's body, it could feel a shocking amount of qi and blood. It was extremely majestic. If it were to devour him, it would definitely benefit it greatly. As for the female human, although she did not have such majestic qi and blood fluctuations, she had a noble aura. Her bloodline was extraordinary. If it were to devour her, it would also benefit it greatly. Swallow. Both of them. The snow ape's appetite was very big. It wanted to swallow both of these humans and absorb their vitality and bloodline for its own use. In this way, it could break through its own shackles and perhaps break through to the saint realm in one fell swoop. As a powerful half-step saint monster beast and an ape-type monster beast, although the snow ape couldn't speak the human language, its intelligence wasn't low. It was not inferior to a normal human. Chapter 12:10. Golden Phoenix Break. Huang Fu Fei Huang's entire body was covered in golden light, burning like a raging flame. A flying feather spear extended from his right arm, and with a shake of the spear, endless golden light rushed out like flames. Beams after beams of light circled around each other, and an extremely resounding cry resounded through the world. The cry sounded so noble, as if it was born as an extraordinary king. As the flying feather spear pierced forward, the golden flames shattered the sky, and the astonishing pressure of the spear crushed the snow in all directions, and rushed towards the snow ape at an astonishing speed, as if a dragon or snake had turned over its body. The spear light surged, and a golden bird spread its wings, burning with golden flames. The flames were endless, terrifying as if they could burn everything in the world. As soon as it appeared, the snow within 100 meters of the bird melted in an instant. The golden phoenix flew forward, leaving behind a 1,000-meter-long ravine. It was as if a mountain was collapsing and the earth was splitting apart. This attack could shatter an iceberg. Noble, mysterious, blazing, and even contained a hint of dominance and supremacy. Chen Zong was secretly surprised. The #1 disciple of the Huang Fu clan was indeed extraordinary. The power of this attack was very, very strong. If it was half a year ago, he definitely wouldn't have been able to withstand it and would have been defeated in an instant. And it could be seen that this attack wasn't Huang Fu Fei Huang's strongest attack. Although he was shocked, Chen Zong didn't stop at all. The heavy dragon sword shot out from the sheath like lightning, and this sword carried the vigorous and heavy power of a thunderous mountain, crushing the void as it blasted out. This sword seemed slow, but it moved forward inch by inch. With every inch it moved forward, its momentum became more vigorous. The further it moved forward, the stronger the momentum, and the more vigorous the power was. It crushed the void in front of it, compressing the air until it was stronger than steel and gold. Power, weight, vigor, dominance, and all kinds of auras were integrated into this sword, making this sword even more powerful. This sword strike was a tyrannical strike that Chen Zong had unleashed after his continuous cultivation and the accumulation of all his sword technique. Combined with the astonishing weight of the heavy dragon sword, he had fused the profundities of the Heart Sword Sutra into it. Chen Zong named this sword the Heart-Sinking Sword. If the heart sank, the mountains would collapse and the earth would crack. The incomparably dark sword light seemed to be compressed into an ancient mountain. It was vigorous and heavy to the extreme, vividly displaying its power. Who knew how many years of accumulated snow was crushed by this majestic dark sword light? It wasn't the strongest attack, but it was an all-out attack. After all, the snow ape was a demi-saint demon beast, and its strength was extremely powerful. The two's goal, not to kill it, was to stall it for a while, and buy them some time to escape. Demi-saint demon beast. Even if Chen Ji used flame-flowing sword, he wasn't sure that he could kill it. Moreover, this was the snow's hot power, and the sword was swords. Also, he didn't Fei Huang snow and snow, he Fei Huang was Fei Huang. Fei Huang snow, Fei Fei snow, snow, snow. Huang Fu Fei Huang also didn't plan to fight to the death with this snow ape. It would only be a waste of time. In the face of the two powerful attacks, the snow ape's scarlet eyes revealed a trace of human mockery. "Two ants, do you think you can fight with me like this?" A thunderous roar shook the heavens and the earth. Faint ripples spread out crazily, and the surrounding snow exploded inch by inch. It was as if a vacuum had been blasted out. Just the roar alone had such power. Immediately, the snow ape shook its arms, and the white hair on its body surged like waves, spreading to its arms. The originally thick arms seemed to swell up, becoming more and more terrifying. Boom! Boom! The shaking of its arms seemed to condense two icebergs, and its fists burned with snow-white chi, like a flame wave, emitting a terrifying power, shattering all directions. The two fists blasted out like a giant hammer, and the chi of the fists was like a giant dragon soaring through the sky. Under the two fists, the golden phoenix brake and the heart-sinking sword paused, and were instantly broken. The extremely terrifying chi exploded, and the fierce momentum shook the eardrums. The astonishing chi rolled out like a tsunami, rolling up thousands of snow waves and exploding in all directions. In the snow waves, the chi of the snow ape's fists blasted out, shattering the bodies of Chen Zong and Huangfu Feihuang. However, it was not the real body, but the afterimages left behind by the two. As early as the first blow, the two had already burst out at full speed, because they knew very well that the blow could not cause any damage to the snow ape. They did not continue to fight and quickly left, one on one side. The snow ape's angry roar sounded in the blizzard, and it felt that it had been played by the two insignificant humans. In anger, the snow ape's eyes turned, shooting out an extremely angry murderous intent, and its fists blasted out again. The chi of the fists was like a demonic dragon rushing out from the abyss, bringing with it a terrifying chi that could destroy everything. Chen Zong and Huangfu Feihuang's expressions changed greatly. The two did not plan to join forces, especially Huangfu Feihuang. The pride in her bloodline made her not want to join forces with a cultivator without bloodline power. Huangfu Feihuang dodged the snow ape's attack from afar. After Chen Zong dodged, he slashed out with his sword. This sword was still the heart-sinking sword. It was powerful and unparalleled, but it was not aimed at the snow ape. It was aimed at an ice mountain. The majestic pitch-black sword light was extremely overbearing, and when it hit the iceberg, a crack appeared on the iceberg. The purpose of this sword was to break the iceberg and make it collapse, blocking the snow ape's pursuit. The second sword, the third sword, Chen Zong's sword was extremely fast, and the three swords hit the same spot on the iceberg at the same time. A powerful force burst out, and the impact of the sword chi strangled, causing more and more cracks to appear on the iceberg. The sound of cracking could be heard continuously, and the iceberg began to collapse. Once the iceberg collapsed, its power was even more terrifying than the snow mountain from before, and the snow ape did not dare to ignore it. The loud rumbling sound echoed in all directions, and the snow region seemed to be shaking along with it. Huge chunks of ice exploded and rolled down, shattering everything. The snow ape was furious, and its fists smashed the chunks of ice, and rushed toward Chen Zong with unstoppable force. Although the snow ape had the intelligence of a normal human, and its own cleverness, it was still a monster after all, and was more easily angered than a human. Once angered, it would lose its mind. It thought that the male human had broken the iceberg and brought it trouble, so it hated Chen Zong and chased after him. Heartless sword. The sword slashed out diagonally, and without any intention, this sword followed the most profound fluctuation in the heart, and the trajectory of the sword light was extremely mysterious and unpredictable. This sword slashed out directly toward the snow ape. The power of the sword was not enough to kill the snow ape, but it happened to hit a point, and stopped the snow ape's forward momentum. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough to affect the battle. The iceberg shattered, and its power surged, and a huge chunk of ice fell, startling the snow ape. In the next moment, the snow ape's body was submerged in ice. Chen Zong took the opportunity to escape. The power brought about by the shattering of the iceberg was astonishing, and the chill was even more terrifying. The experts in the sky could clearly see the situation of the people in the snow region. Some of them smiled when they saw Chen Zong deal with a half-saint level demon beast, and some of them were disdainful of it. After breaking through a pack of snow wolves, rushing out of an avalanche, crossing an ice storm, and escaping from the pursuit of a half-saint monster beast, Chen Zong encountered a group of Snow Domain's monster beasts, and after killing his way out, he encountered another ice storm. Ice storms were very common in the snow domain, and some were stronger while others were weaker. A weak ice storm could be resisted by a late-stage transcendent, but a strong ice storm could even freeze and kill a half-saint master. Of course, a strong ice storm was rarely seen. This journey was definitely not easy. It was very difficult and dangerous, and there were even several life and death crises. Even so, Chernzong was not afraid. This kind of experience was a form of tempering. It sharpened his sword, sharpened his will, and tempered his mind to become even stronger. No matter how big the snow domain was, it was not truly endless, and there was always an end. After 2 days and 2 nights of long-distance travel, Chernzong finally saw his destination. The ground was no longer covered with snow, but ice, extremely hard 10,000-year-old ice. Chernzong tried to step on it, but found that all he could do was break a few ice chips, which made Chernzong secretly surprised. He estimated in his heart that if he used all his strength, he could break this 10,000-year-old ice, but he would not be able to cause much damage. The 10,000-year-old ice stretched for several hundred kilometers, and at the end of it, there were 2 3,000-meter-tall icebergs. These 2 icebergs were 100 meters apart, like 2 sharp fangs piercing the sky. If one looked more carefully, one would think that the 2 icebergs were split in half. Between the 2 icebergs, there was a 100-meter-tall giant light gate that was rotating slowly like a whirlpool. The white color made it seem like countless snowflakes were being born and destroyed. Flying Snow Secret Realm. This was the gate of the Flying Snow Secret Realm. When Chernzong was dozens of miles away from the gate of the Flying Snow Secret Realm, there were already people who directly entered the Flying Snow Secret Realm through the teleportation gate. In this stage of the competition, you would not have the chance to be in the same place. If you could reach the end of the snow domain earlier, you would be able to enter the Flying Snow Secret Realm earlier and enter the second stage earlier. Seeing that there were already a few people who had entered earlier than him, Chernzong frowned slightly. He unleashed his power and increased his speed even further. Go, go, go! The target was right in front of him. Go in. The dozens of miles of distance was shortened rapidly under Chernzong's extreme speed, and the gate of the Flying Snow Secret Realm between the 2 icebergs became clearer and clearer. 10 miles, 9 miles, 8 miles, 7 miles, 6 miles. The distance was getting shorter and shorter, and Chernzong felt a shocking aura spreading out from the teleportation gate, spreading in all directions. The closer he got, the stronger the aura became. The Flying Snow Secret Realm was a secret realm that was created by the experts of various sections. Naturally, it was extremely mysterious, and so was the gate. 1 mile. Chernzong's body was as fast as lightning as he swept across the sky. The distance of 1 mile was instantly covered by him. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.